16 inches, a 1 7 twist rate, government profile, 0.750 inch journal, mid-length gas system, 4150 chromoly vanadium steel with a black nitride finish. Sounds familiar, right? That's because it's the same manufacturing jargon listed on most AR-15 barrels that you're gonna find today. Personally, guys, I have read a million barrel descriptions on the internet, and I almost never leave that product page understanding why that specific barrel is better or worse than any other barrel that's out there on the market that I could be using on the end of my AR-15. But that ends today. Look, guys, the barrel is one of the most important, if not the most important part of your AR-15 build. It decides how far you can shoot, it decides how accurate your rounds are capable of being, and most importantly, it ultimately decides what kind of rounds you're going to be able to shoot with that rifle. But there's a lot that goes into making a barrel decision. This is the AT3 Tactical AR-15 Barrel Guide. I'm Josh, your guide, and this is episode 1 of what's going to be a multi-part series where we explore literally everything there is to know about AR-15 barrels together so that collectively we can all be better informed about what the heck a cold hammer forged barrel actually is, past just some marketing buzzword that manufacturer X put on their website. Let's kick this series off by talking about what our AR-15 barrels are actually made out of. This probably isn't something that a lot of us have put any real thought into before, but the barrel material selection does actually matter and have an impact. When choosing a material for the purpose of building a barrel, manufacturers need to choose something that's designed to withstand extreme heat, extreme pressure, and extreme wear from repeated firing. The tensile strength of the metal and the metal's ability to retain its strength and hardness is key here, and it's why manufacturers can't save money by skimping and going with a cheaper aluminum like they do elsewhere on the firearm. Think of your barrel as a vessel for containing the heat and the pressure of each round after it's been fired. If you went with a cheaper aluminum alloy, it simply would not be safe. We're talking about repeated instances of pressures up to 55,000 to 62,000 psi with constant heat reaching in excess of 500 to 800 degrees Fahrenheit, all while a projectile is scraping its way down the rifling inside of your barrel at 3,000 feet per second. To prevent rupturing, warping, or just plain rapid degradation of the barrel itself, manufacturers have to rely on specialized steel alloys when making their barrels. The most common types of steel alloy used in the manufacture of an AR-15 barrel are 4140 and 4150 chromoly steel, 4150 chromoly vanadium steel, and 416R stainless steel. You can usually find out what kind of steel was used in your barrel by checking the stamping from the manufacturer on the barrel itself. It's going to usually look something like this. Now, barrel finishes are also an important part of the equation here too, and there's some standout materials like carbon fiber that we're going to get into in just a second, but let's actually break down these alloys first, as they are by far the most common types of material that you're going to see in a barrel, and I personally think you should understand it. 4140 chromoly steel is up first. This is widely regarded as the entry-level barrel material. You might also see it called 4140 chromoly or just 4140 CM in a casual conversation. The Society of Automotive Engineers, believe it or not, are actually the guys who helped us figure out what these metal designations actually mean. So let's start with what 4140 actually means first. Each number here stands for something, and this is going to apply later. So guys, I hope you're taking notes because I'm only going to cover this once. The first digit indicates the primary alloying elements. Since we have the number 4 here, that means it's a chromium molybdenum, molybdenum. Some of these words are a little tough. That means it's a chromium molybdenum alloy steel. Chromium adds hardness, corrosion resistance, and strength, and the molybdenum trips my tongue up, but it improves the toughness, heat resistance, and the hardenability of the barrel. Now, the second digit specifies the series within that group. In this instance, 1 is the standard chromoly series, and it's all we're really going to be talking about today, so that's where we're going to leave it. Higher numbers might indicate modifications, but for the most part, we're working with this standard modification of 1, and there's no need to complicate this subject any further right now. So 4 is the metal, 1 is the deviation. The last 2 digits represent the carbon content in hundredths of a percent. Carbon is the biggest driver of hardness and strength, and in the case of 4140, we know that we have a 0.40% carbon content in the barrel. The easiest thing to remember is that more carbon equals harder and tougher steel if the manufacturer is doing their part through the process of actually making the barrel. Now that 0.40 might indicate something like 0.38% carbon or 0.41% carbon, but it should total out to about 0.40% carbon. So here's the actual chemical makeup of a 4140 CM barrel and what it might actually look like for those of you guys who are super into metal nerd stuff. It's going to be right here. You can go ahead and pause the video. Now, why would a manufacturer use 4140 CM steel on their barrel? Simple answer, guys, it's cheaper to acquire, it's easier to machine with, and if I'm the manufacturer, this is exactly what I want to use to save cash while machining a budget-friendly poverty pony for my entry-level customers who are not shooting their barrel out every 6 months. For you, you might pick this metal because you know the rifle you're building isn't going to be a high-volume rifle, or it's your first build and you just want to save a little cash on the project because you're worried you might mess something up. Now, 4140 offers decent tensile strength, good durability for non-abusive use, and it pairs well with your affordable finishes like nitrate and phosphate. That cost saving, however, comes with the drawbacks of having a slightly less heat-resistant material that's not as long-lasting as the competition under heavy use. It's also not as inherently accurate or corrosion resistant as something like 416R stainless, unless it has extra treatments, and those extra treatments are often going to push the barrel cost up just a little bit, in which case it might be easier just to go with a 4150. Now, the simple upgrade for 4140 that I'm not going to dig too deep into is to change to a 4150 CM. This is pretty much the exact same thing as everything that I just talked about with 4140, but we have 0.10% more carbon content in the barrel, which is going to give us slightly more durability and heat resistance with a little bit better accuracy over the life of the barrel, which is also going to be slightly longer because of that extra carbon content in the barrel. Taking it up a notch from the standard CM barrel materials, we get to the 4150 chromoly vanadium steel, or just 4150 CMV. Not only are we increasing the carbon content of the barrel here with the additional 0.10% carbon, but we're also adding a small amount of material called vanadium into the metal mix. Usually this is going to be to the tune of 0.08 or 0.15%, which is going to help refine the grain structure of the steel and improve the wear resistance of the barrel, and also make the steel even tougher at those increased temperatures that you'll see on something like a duty rifle. Here's what the chemical makeup of a 4150 CMV barrel actually looks like when it's broken down into English for all of my Forged in Fire champions out there. Go ahead and pause the video again if you want to take a look at that. Now, with these compositional changes in the barrel, we're going to get a hardier steel all around. This comes with a slightly increased cost, but from the perspective of someone that pulls the trigger a lot, that might actually matter quite a bit more than you think to have that hardier metal inside of the barrel. That extra carbon and vanadium in the mix gives the barrel a higher tensile strength, far better heat resistance, and a much longer barrel life, which is something that you just absolutely have to have if you're going to use the firearm all the time. From the manufacturer's standpoint, 4150 CMV is the go-to metal for something that's going to see high mileage from the end user. Think about your duty grade rifles or the guns that you grab when the aliens from Mars are invading Earth. Like I said, it's a bit more expensive to produce than just standard 4140 CM or 4150 CM. So the barrels are going to cost about $20 to $50 more on average. But for most people building a reliable, no BS rifle, that small premium is actually worth it to get a 20 to 25K round barrel that's going to let you put some serious training in before the barrel is actually shot out. Now, to check your barrel, if you're looking for that CMV, what you're going to look at is you're going to look at the metal contents. That's going to be that 4150 CR R, M, O, and V. Each of those letters represents the element that's put into the barrel. So in this case, we've got CR for chromium, MO for molybdenum, and then V for the vanadium. Those are the elements that are making up this barrel steel. Let's move on to the next one. So you think maybe we could stop there because we've clearly established a good, better, best, but we're not done just yet. There's still one more common metal that we have to talk about in the barrel space, and that's everyone's favorite 416R stainless steel, which is by far the most common and preferred grade for high quality, precision oriented barrels. Major manufacturers like Proof Research, Faxon, Criterion, Ballistic Advantage, and a whole host of other guys have 416R to turn to when they want to build a barrel that is perfectly tuned for getting the round exactly where you want it downrange. When it comes to stainless steel, you might see standard 416 stainless or 410 stainless or 17-4 precipitation hardening stainless, or a couple of other proprietary blends that are out there, but 416R is quite literally the gold standard for accuracy-centric builds because it was designed with barrel manufacturing in mind. Here's what the makeup of that material looks like. You can go ahead and pause the video if you want to check out the elements inside. Now, 416R is a resulfurized, pre-hardened martinistic stainless steel, meaning that they've added controlled sulfur to make it machine-like butter while keeping a high chromium content for natural corrosion resistance and excellent performance in cold temperatures down to -40 degrees Fahrenheit. That means with 416R, you're getting much smoother bores, much tighter tolerances, and an inherent edge in accuracy. Now, the trade-off for this sub-MOA accuracy is that it's going to wear much faster under sustained rapid fire. Of course, modern finishes like nitride can dramatically extend life on any of these materials, and that's why we're going to cover barrel finishes in this series in a future episode. But for now, we're just focusing on the base steel itself of 416R. Ultimately, what it boils down to is tighter groups, a higher cost, lower round counts for the life of the barrel, and that's really the bottom line. Now, with 416R, there's also one more emergent material that's worth mentioning in the barrel space, and that is your carbon fiber wrapped barrels. These aren't your everyday option, guys. They are super, super, super niche and very cost prohibitive for almost all of us. With, I think they have about a $500 to $1,000 premium attached to some of these barrels, but they're becoming more common every year, and with that, the price is starting to come down. Brands like Proof Research, BSF, and Christensen Arms are producing these very regularly now, so I figured we should cover them real quick just so that you guys have an idea of what they actually are. So here's how the barrels actually work. They start with a 416R stainless steel liner that handles all of the pressure and the rifling and the chambering, you know, all of the critical parts that the barrel needs to do, and then the barrel gets wrapped in a high-strength aerospace-grade carbon fiber using some sort of proprietary process that I can't adequately explain here in a YouTube video. And what you end up with is often a 60 to 65% lighter barrel compared to a full steel barrel like the ones that are here on the table. This makes your rifle lighter for hunting or competition or doing long-range movements with the rifle, and that's one of the big wins to it. Now, is the carbon fiber wrap actually improving the accuracy or the barrel harmonics or the heat dissipation? There's a lot of debate about that online, with some people saying like absolutely carbon fiber is the best, and then you've got a whole other camp of people who disagree with that and think it's just good for dropping a couple ounces, that everything else is just marketing fluff from the companies that are making those barrels. But we're going to leave that debate for you guys down in the comment section, and I'm not going to get super involved with it because I have very limited experience with it, so we'll let you guys go down there. Either way, it's an option that's worth talking about if you're chasing ultralight performance, and it's something that you should be aware of because the technology and the manufacturing processes that go into that are improving every single year, and we keep seeing more and more of these barrels, so it's just something I wanted to get on your radar. But before we move on, let's be absolutely real for a minute. The base steel is super important, but it's only part of the story with the barrels. How the barrel is made and finished can actually make a huge difference in how the barrel is performing and how long the barrel is going to last. For example, many of the best duty grade barrels are 4150 CMV steel that are cold hammer forged and chrome lined. That process work hardens the steel, extends the barrel life under heavy abuse, and it adds a lot of additional durability against heat and wear over time. Most high mileage civilian barrels today are going to be nitrided, which hardens the surface dramatically and can make even a solid 4150 cm last 15 to 25,000 rounds before the accuracy really starts to drop on the barrel, or you do what's called shooting the barrel out. On the flip side of that, your precision barrels and 416R stainless are usually going to shine when they have button rifling or cut rifling for those super tight tolerances and the super consistent shot groups. But they can wear a lot faster under mag dump heat conditions without a nitride treatment being added to them at the end. And these round counts, guys, they're not set in stone either. The real lifespan depends on your firing schedule, your ammo type, how hot you're running the rifle, and how much maintenance you're doing. A nitrided or chrome-lined 4150 CMV duty barrel might handle 20,000 rounds of moderate training, no problem, while an untreated precision 416R could start opening up your groups after just 5 to 10,000 rounds of hard use. Most of us, though, we never come close to shooting out a quality barrel anyways. If you're anything like I am, then I already know that you're going to be upgrading your barrel long before you start to see any degradation in the performance. But we're going to get more into those subjects later. It's just worth bringing up now so you don't think that I'm saying this is the end all be all with metals. So let's recap and go over just metals. I want you to imagine yourself as a major barrel manufacturer just for a minute. You've got a full lineup of unfinished barrel blanks for every kind of AR-15 barrel under the sun, and right now you're in the warehouse sorting stacks of them so that you can get them ready to get shipped out to production. Now, in your budget stack of barrels, you've got a mountain of 4140 CM blanks. These are going to be perfect for your low-cost, mass-produced rifles that are getting people into the AR-15 for the very first time, something you might find on the shelf of like a Dunham's. Now, one step to the right of that, you're going to have a crate full of 4150 CM. These are just enough extra to deliver a solid, no-nonsense barrel, but outside of your internal quality control being a little bit more intense due to the slight cost premium, there isn't a whole lot extra put into these than the 4140 barrels that you just had. Now, next to that big crate of 4150 CM, you're going to have another slightly smaller crate for maybe a government contract or something, full of 4150 CMV blanks with the added vanadium and higher carbon content. These barrels are going to go out to get installed on duty rifles they're going to get shot a whole ton by semi-professional or professional shooters that need something that can take a heck of a lot of abuse. Now, on the very top shelf, you've got your 416R stainless steel blanks that are reserved for competition shooters and professional hunters that want to keep those sub-MOA groups. They're all just barrel blanks made from different materials at the end of the day, but now you should have a solid understanding of what those different materials actually mean and how to identify which materials were used in your barrel. This is a blunderbuss. And like much of the early firearms technology out there, there's no rifling in this barrel. You point it at what you need to shoot, and then you pull the trigger while hoping for the best because it utilizes a smoothbore instead of rifling. And this is a modern AR-15 barrel. It's a precision-engineered piece of technology in physical form that's capable of enabling the person using it to hold a minute of angle-sized group, or even better, at 100 yards on a consistent basis for thousands of rounds. This is episode 2 of the AT3 Tactical AR-15 Barrels Guide, and I'm Josh, here to help you learn everything there is to know about barrels. Today, we're going to talk about rifling, and we're going to talk about twist rate. Let's get it. Take another look at this smoothbore blunderbuss with me real quick. This is a point and pray weapon system that worked for centuries in ship-to-ship combat. There's no rifling here. If this is in your hands, you are looking to shoot a cloud of lead shot or a large ball-shaped round that's not going to hit anything without serious luck past, 50 yards. This is an extension of your boarding axe. It's meant to cause maximum carnage in the earliest moments of a deck brawl. Past that, it's not good for much. Now, this was the prevailing school of thought in a lot of older firearms. You see, it's believed that modern rifling as we know it today came to be through just the tinkering of gunsmiths in the late 15th century. You see, gunsmiths in Vienna and Nuremberg initially began cutting straight flat grooves into rifle barrels to collect black powder fouling to prevent the barrels from jamming after a few shots. By the early 1500s, two names rose to the top as the cream of the crop in this kind of experimental place. Those names are Gaspard Kollner in Vienna back in about 1940 and Augustus Cotter in Nuremberg around 1520. These are the two top names, the two top guys that were really getting rifling going. Now, Kollner is credited with the invention of those straight grooves that I was talking about, and Cotter is most frequently cited as the first gunsmith to cut spiral rifling into his barrels. But these are topics that are still debated because history's kind of a tricky thing. Early rifled guns existed by the 1540s, and wealthy hunters and elite troops used them all throughout the 1600s and the 1700s, with some of the best known examples of these early rifles seeing service in the American Revolutionary War, with units like Daniel Morgan's sharpshooters who were employed at the Battle of Cowpens. But even still, rifled barrels took a long time to catch on. Hand cutting spirals early on was super slow, super expensive, and super finicky. It made the firearms super difficult to mass produce for military use, and the black powder fouling in those early rifled barrels clogged the groove, which was a huge problem in warfare that still required mass sustained formation-based volley fires. That, however, all changed in the 1800s. In the 1840s sometime, a man named Claude Etienne Minié, I probably just butchered his name, developed one of the most significant and deadly technological advancements in ammunition. The Minié ball, or Minié ball, or we're just going to call it the Mini ball, was a cylindrical, conical pointed bullet with a hollow base that expanded due to gas pressure, sealing the barrel and improving the bullet's ability to interact with barrel rifling. This new type of ammunition, which was heavily utilized in the American Civil War, combined with the always marching forward progression of manufacturing, and enabled rifle barrels to become not only practical, but also affordable for mass production and ripe for innovation and improvement, which brings us to today. So you're probably wondering, how is rifling in a modern barrel actually done today? Well, fortunately for us, we have penicillin today, and we also don't need to take our hunk of steel down to the gunsmith to get our barrel manually rifled anymore. We have machines and tools for that today, and the methods and processes to do it have been proven over 100 years and through millions of individual machined and manufactured barrels. Now, before we get too much deeper into the how, I've got to preface all of this by saying that there is no single best way to rifle an AR-15 barrel, guys. It depends on your individual priorities. As always, what your use case is, what your budget is, and what you value the most out of your barrel is going to be the determining factor on what's best for you. All of the rifling processes I'm about to talk about could produce excellent barrels when done by a reputable manufacturer. So keep that in mind, and guys, don't judge your buddy if his barrel is a little bit cheaper than yours, please. First up, let's talk about button rifling, because it's the most common way to get rifling into a modern barrel here in the world that we live in right now. This is a fast and very cost-effective way to efficiently and consistently rifle a barrel, which is why manufacturers like it so much. The process starts by utilizing a button tool. It's essentially a bullet-shaped die made out of ultra-hard tungsten carbide with the exact inverse rifling pattern ground into its surface. The button is used by either pushing or pulling it through the bore under high pressure while rotating the blank. This displaces the metal outwards to form the grooves without cutting away any metal like in a more traditional rifling process. And by traditional, I mean a historic way of doing it. In post-processing, the barrel is typically stress relieved by heating or controlled cooling to minimize any residual tension from the displacement of the barrel material. Following that, it's honed or lapped for final smoothness prior to any actual finishing. Keep in mind, this is all a cold forming process, meaning it's done at room temperature to work harden the bore surface for even more durability, which is why this is such a common way to get rifling into a barrel. Here's where it's not the best option though. When you compare a button rifled barrel to other processes like cold hammer forging, it doesn't always have the longest lifespan. Under extreme sustained fire, you'll see throat erosion start sooner than on something like your cold hammer forged barrels that are out on the market today. And the cold hammer forged barrels, as a result, have led to button rifling seeming like a less premium option. That said, Faxon, Ballistic Advantage, Criterion, and some of the best barrel manufacturers in the world all have button rifled barrels. So I honestly wouldn't worry too much about it, especially if you're just building a general use, a training use, or even a light duty or competition use rifle. You're getting about 90% of the rifling performance with just a slightly shorter barrel lifespan that could probably still pretty easily push 20,000 rounds before you start to experience any accuracy issues with the barrel. Now, before I go on to explain that marketing buzzword everyone loves, cold hammer forged, I have to talk about one more thing, and that's cut rifling. You might have heard this referred to as hook rifling as well. It's just the oldest and most traditional method for creating rifling in a firearm barrel, and it dates back to that history lesson I gave earlier in this video. Believe it or not, it's still used to this day for ultra premium, match grade, and custom barrels where precision is the ultimate objective of the rifle that the user is building. To do a manually cut barrel, a cutter tool in the form of a small, hardened carbide hook is utilized. The cutter's width matches the desired groove width, and its depth is adjustable via a wedge or a screw mechanism that enables the manufacturer to cut groove by groove. So the cool thing about this process is that you're getting true workmanship here. Once finished, the barrel is lapped and polished to remove any tool marks or chatter until you have a mirror smooth bore. There's no stress relief needed with this process because it's a true cutting process done with nothing more than the tools of the trade and cutting oil. We're talking about metal removal here, not displacement. With cut rifling, you have the highest potential for accuracy and consistency due to the tight tolerances on groove depth, width, and the twist rate uniformity that's enabled by the full customization you get from having a cut rifled barrel. There's also no added stress because there's little to no residual tension in the metal since you just remove the steel instead of simply moving it like with the other processes. That means there's no need for post-rifling stress relief. On the flip side, however, it takes a while to get a cut rifled barrel, and it's usually very, very, very expensive, like call for pricing expensive. Companies like Krieger, Bartlein, Scheelen, Brooks, they all do custom cut rifled barrels, and there's a small army of custom builders out there that do it too. But if you're not chasing extreme precision or competition to your accuracy, a cut rifled barrel just might not be for you because they aren't really ideal for high volume shooting, and they're super rare in places where longevity under heat and abuse matters the most. So that's specifically talking about you guys that are out there putting 8,000 rounds through a barrel in a single 6-month period. Okay, marketing buzzword time. Cold hammer forged. What does that actually mean? A cold hammer forged barrel is a barrel that has been rifled through a high durability method that is especially popular for duty grade and extreme high volume AR-15 barrels. It's the process that's used by a lot of name brand and top tier manufacturers that creates an incredibly tough, consistent barrel that excels under heat, abuse, thousands of rounds, and hundreds of millions of Reddit posts about cool guys who do cool guy stuff. Keep in mind, cold hammer forging is a cold forming process that's done at room temperature despite the name cold hammer forged. You start with a short, thick steel barrel blank that's usually a 4150 chromium molybdenum vanadium steel with a smooth, oversized polished bore hole right through the center. Once you have that, a hardened steel mandrel rod with the reverse or inverse rifling pattern engraved onto its surface is inserted to the bore. This mandrel also includes the chamber profile for the barrel as well, so it's really a 2-for-1 deal for the manufacturer. Once you have the blank and the mandrel assembled together, it goes into a massive forging machine where huge carbide or hardened steel hammers strike the exterior at high speeds, reaching hundreds of blows per second while the barrel blank rotates inside. This pounds the steel inward onto the mandrel, compressing and flowing the metal to form the rifling inside, the chamber of the barrel, and the external contour of the barrel profile in most cases. That whole hammering cycle takes about 60 seconds once you have the barrel all set up. That sounds a bit more violent than our button and cut rifling techniques, right? Once forged, the mandrel is removed, leaving the precise rifling imprinted on the barrel. From here, the barrel is stress relieved to reduce internal stresses from the hammering process, and then it's honed or lapped if needed, but lapping is pretty rare since cold hammer forging generally leaves you with a superb bore finish. Guys, there is a reason past just wanting to use marketing jargon that the big dogs like Bravo Company, FN, LMT, HK, Daniel Defense, and Knights Armament all choose to go with cold hammer forging on their barrels. The work hardening of this process strengthens the steel grain structure, which provides excellent resistance to heat, throat erosion, and wear, meaning these barrels are usually in the 25 to 30,000 round range before you start to see the accuracy slip. It also provides the manufacturers with extreme levels of consistency because the mandrel pretty much guarantees precise, uniform rifling and chambering on their barrels in just 60 seconds, which is huge when you're on the floor of a manufacturing facility. The only real drawback to cold hammer forging a barrel is on the customer's end, and it's because of the cost. You pay for the durability and the precision work from the manufacturer here with cold hammer forging, but when it comes to the peak of machining technology and manufacturing processes, you're really hitting the top of the mountain with what we can do today with barrel manufacturing that isn't a 100% custom tailored made barrel specifically for your individual use case. All right, the buzzword out of the way. I gotta talk about two things real quick before I explain rifling and twist rate to you, so just hang in there. Broach rifling and electrochemical machining, or EC rifling. I gotta talk about them real quick. Broach rifling is a production-oriented cutting method where a long, multi-tooth broach tool is pulled through the bore in one single pass, cutting all of the grooves at once while twisting to create the spiral inside of the barrel. Guys, this is super fast with good dimensional control, but it's not really something that's used in the context of AR-15s, but I needed to bring it up so that you knew that it existed. Also, there's a kind of a new emergent technology called electrochemical machining, or EC rifling. It involves using electricity, an electrolyte solution, and a shaped cathode to dissolve the metal and etch the rifling grooves directly into the barrel with no mechanical or cutting or added stress. The thing with this stuff is that it's really new. And as far as I know, not a single major AR brand on the market today is actually using this on their main line for manufacturing. All right, I know what some of you are probably thinking right now. Josh, you just explained to me how rifling is made, but I just got here and I don't really know what rifling actually is yet. Don't worry, if you're still here, I got you. Rifling is the series of spiral grooves that are cut and formed inside of the barrel bore during the above-mentioned processes. Those grooves, which are the low channels, create raised lands, which is the high part in the barrel that actually contacts the bullet as it travels through the barrel. Now, in a typical AR-15 barrel, you're going to usually have 6 lands and 6 grooves, but that exact number can vary slightly depending on the manufacturer and the rifling type. When you fire around, expanding gases push the bullet down the bore. As the bullet moves forward, the lands bite into and engrave the softer copper jacket of the bullet. Because the grooves spiral down the length of the barrel, the bullet is forced to spin as it travels. By the time it exits the muzzle of your barrel, the bullet is spinning rapidly around its long axis, created what is scientifically known as gyroscopic stability. Gyroscopic stability is not super difficult or scientific, so don't get too caught up on the words that I just made Ben put up on the screen, and you should probably go check out his YouTube channel at Korean Marksman. He's the guy editing this video, so give him a look. But gyroscopic stability, not really that hard. If you've ever spun a top or thrown a football, you already have a good idea of how it works. It's when the spin stabilizes the round in flight. Without the spin created by the lands and the grooves in the rifling of the barrel, the round would destabilize rapidly in flight, wobbling or flipping end over end, which destroys the accuracy of the round. Wobble, 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 wobble. You'll know really fast if this is happening to you, by the way. On a paper target downrange, you'll see what's known as keyholing, where the round basically impacts the paper sideways, making a keyhole shape. With proper rifling induced spin, the bullet will fire point first, resist wind drift, and it will maintain accuracy over much longer ranges. With the AR-15, we almost exclusively use what is known as conventional rifling. This means you have sharp-edged lands and grooves, usually with 6 grooves in the barrel. This is the standard profile you get on a vast majority of barrels, regardless if it's your budget poverty pony or the most high-end AR-15 barrel on the market. Usually, you won't even see the rifling process of the barrel mentioned in a product description because of how common it is to just use conventional rifling. But there's actually a lot of nuance to rifling that we could talk about. Things like 5R rifling, polygonal rifling, different groove counts, different land shapes, and how all those variations affect fouling, velocity, barrel life, and cleaning are something that we can deep dive later if it's something that you guys are actually really interested in. But for now, I want to keep this part of the rifling section of the series pretty surface level. Let me know down in the comment sections if you actually want to get deeper though on that subject, because we can definitely do it. My buddy Bill is a gunsmith and a custom rifle barrel builder, and I'm sure we could get him on the AT3 Armory podcast if you guys really want to geek out on all the different things there is to know about rifling. Just let me know down there. Twist rate is directly connected to rifling, and it's something you hear a lot of people talking about and debating online. It's a direct measurement of how aggressively the rifling spirals inside of the barrel, and it's often expressed in a simple ratio like 1:7. If you're curious about what the twist rate is on a barrel that you already own, you can usually find that information by checking the manufacturer's stamp on your barrel. It's usually going to look something a little bit like this. It's also right next to where that steel was stamped that we talked about in episode 1. Now, let me explain the twist rate ratio to you real quick. I've seen this trip people up, but it's actually really simple. The 1 is expressed as 1 full 360-degree rotation of the round inside of the barrel. With our second number, we're expressing the number of inches the round needs to travel before the full 360-degree rotation is completed. So for a quick example, 1:7 means every 7 inches, the round is going to do 1 full rotation inside of the barrel. 1:8, same thing. Every 8 inches, the round is going to do 1 full rotation in the barrel. I think you guys get the idea. To make this a bit more clear, rifling provides the mechanism to cause the round to spiral as it travels down the barrel. Twist rate controls how quickly that spiral actually turns. A twist rate like 1:7 has tighter spirals, which means more rotations per inch, whereas a twist rate of 1:9 has a gentler pattern, which results in fewer rotations per inch. Now, this is where people get tripped up and have these huge debates about twist rate and why twist rate actually matters, because we're going to go into a space I really don't like to get into, but it's a matter of ballistics. Longer, heavier bullets need more spin to stay stable. They have more mass and more surface area to destabilize in flight, and that means you want to have a faster, more aggressive twist rate inside of your barrel. Exact opposite with shorter, lighter bullets. They need less spin because too much spin can cause what's known as overstabilization, which is really something that probably isn't a huge problem, but you guys are going to yell at me about it in the comments if I say so. Just keep that in mind. Lighter bullet, less spin. With 5.56 ammunition specifically, you're usually shooting between 55 and 77 grain. 1:7 and 1:8 is usually going to get the job done for you, but a 1:7 twist rate is really the most common in this caliber because it simply gets the job done. I grabbed 4 random barrels over there. I think all 4 of these are 1:7. Where this really starts to matter is when you're branching out into other calibers that the AR platform is built on. Think like your 22 LR or your 9mm PCC or a 350 Legend or 6mm ARC AR platform. If you're using a smaller lighter bullet, you might want to go with a slower twist rate. With a heavier or a larger bullet, you might want to tighten that up with a much faster twist rate to help stabilize that round as it travels downrange. All right, let's wrap this up with something simple that we're all going to get, and that is throwing a football. Imagine this smoothbore blunderbuss behind me as a brick. The brick is awkwardly shaped, it's kind of heavy, and when you throw it, the brick just kind of tumbles end over end. You're not going to get very far, and if you hit someone, it's probably going to be a mess. The mini ball in rifling changed everything with firearms, though. The mini ball is the shape that enables a perfect spiral. The lands and grooves are the grip and the laces that let you get a perfect spiral to send that ball right where you want it. The machining processes are how the laces get installed on the football. Button is super fast, it's mass produced, and it's on just about every single ball that you could pick up at Walmart. Cut is your obsessively hand-stitched football that is one of one, and Cold Hammer Forged is your NFL game day ball. Now, twist rate is how hard the quarterback can put the spiral on that guy. 1 in 9 is just a gentle lob, and 1 in 7 is a tight, aggressive spiral meant to send that sucker straight to your receiver down in the end zone. And keep in mind that this football reference is brought to you by my jealousy of CJ going to the Super Bowl last weekend and not inviting anyone else on the AT3 tactical team. We're not jealous, I promise. But next time you look at a barrel listing on the internet, there's a few less buzzwords to trip you up since you know what they actually mean now, and you have a better understanding of what twist rate actually does and how the rifling in your barrel works. 13.7 is the new king of barrels. No, real operators use 14.5. Nah. Anything under 16 inches is just a gimmick. Get it out of here. Everybody's got strong opinions on this subject. We've all seen them. The problem is those opinions rarely come with any context. Barrel length only makes sense once you understand what the rifle is actually going to be used for. This is episode 3 of the AT3 Tactical AR-15 Barrels Guide. I'm Josh. I've been working with AR-15s in a professional capacity since around 2007. If you're just joining the series, episode 1 covered exactly what materials go into your barrel when it's being manufactured, and episode 2 broke down rifling and twist rate and how the twist rate and rifling is actually installed in the barrel. Today, I'm going to help you get through all of the noise and internet arguments to show you exactly what barrel length is all about so that you can be a better informed AR-15 builder. By the time this little red bar moves from the left side of your screen all the way to the right side, you're going to know exactly what barrel length makes the most sense for the way that you actually shoot every single day. If you shoot every single day. I hope you shoot every single day. You really should. Let's start at the beginning. What does barrel length actually mean? Here's what it's not. It's not from the end of where your handguard meets your upper receiver to the end of your muzzle device. And it's definitely not the overall length of your rifle either, because believe it or not, I've seen someone try to make that argument before at a Dunham's. It also might not even be what the manufacturer has listed on the side of the box, so let's get into it a little bit. Barrel length is measured from the closed bolt face all the way to the muzzle crown. The official way to measure your barrel length is to measure it with a straight dowel rod or a certified barrel length gauge, and it's done by pushing it through the bore until it stops against the bolt face. Then on the official tool, you're going to read the mark at the end of the muzzle with any non-permanent muzzle device already removed. Now, it goes without saying, but your bolt should be forward when you're doing this measurement. I wouldn't suggest trying to cheat here by having your bolt to the rear to add a couple of extra inches to your barrel. Now, the exact measurement of this is what the ATF uses, and it's what determines whether your rifle is a standard rifle, a pistol, or a short-barreled rifle under the NFA like this Mark 18 that we have on the table. Now, here's where people start to make mistakes, and I see this a lot more than you would think, actually. If the box says 16-inch barrel, that doesn't automatically mean that it's measured at exactly 16 inches. Some manufacturers are a little generous with their rounding, and others don't include any extensions if the muzzle device isn't permanently attached. Now, another one I've seen a few times is guys thinking that their flash hider or their muzzle device automatically adds the legal amount of length that they need to reach that 16-inch rifle minimum. Now, that's not necessarily the case unless you have the muzzle device permanently affixed through a process called pinning and welding, which we're going to talk about just a little bit later. Here's the important part for this series. Everything that we're going to talk about today is specifically about 5.56 or 223 AR-15 barrels. Other calibers and platforms can play by slightly different rules, but once you understand how length works on the AR-15, the rest of it is going to get a lot easier for you regardless of what caliber or platform that you're looking at. So specifically today, 5.56 AR-15s. So now that we're all measuring the exact same thing, let's talk about what actually changes when you start changing the length of the barrel on your AR-15. The single biggest thing that barrel length controls is the muzzle velocity, or how fast the bullet is moving the moment it leaves your muzzle. Here's exactly why that muzzle velocity number might change though. When you pull the trigger, the firing pin strikes the primer and ignites the powder inside of the cartridge case. That powder burns incredibly fast, almost instantaneously in fact, and it turns into a massive volume of superheated high pressure gas. We're talking pressures north of 55,000 pounds per square inch happening all in the fraction of a second. That gas only has one way out at first, so it pushes hard against the base of the bullet, forcing it out of the case and down the barrel. As long as the bullet is still inside of the barrel, that expanding gas keeps accelerating the bullet faster and faster. Now, the longer your barrel is, the more time and distance the bullet has while the gas is still pushing hard and propelling it forward inside of the barrel. Think of it like giving the bullet a longer runway to build speed before it leaves the muzzle, and all that pressure finally vents out into the air at the end of your rifle barrel. More barrel length equals more sustained push, which equals higher muzzle velocity, is basically what I'm saying. But here's the catch. That push is not endless. As the bullet travels farther, the volume behind it keeps getting bigger inside of the barrel, so the pressure starts dropping off. Eventually, you reach a point where adding more length gives you almost no extra speed at all anymore. You're reading about diminishing returns in barrel length. This is generally where that comes from and what that's talking about. More space between the case head and the bullet base means the pressure drops and you start to gain less and less velocity until eventually, if you were to go really far out, you'd eventually start to lose that velocity inside of the barrel altogether. I don't think anyone makes a negative velocity barrel though. Maybe they do. So let me show you with real numbers using two of the most common 5.56 loads that I can find. For full disclosure, these are averages based on test data. So if you want to see a really good video on this topic with live testing, check out this video up here from the king himself, Paul Harrell, where he goes out to the range with a chronometer and actually checks the muzzle velocity as it travels through two different rifle barrels. So first, let's look at the numbers on a lighter 55 grain M193 round. As you can see on screen, you can see how the FPS changes at each different barrel length. Now keep in mind, these are rough estimates. These aren't exact numbers. I'm not doing them live in front of you. These are the numbers that are reported by the manufacturer, but you can see as the barrel length goes up, the FPS also goes up, but the difference is smaller and smaller the longer the barrel gets up. You're still gaining speed, but those gains are smaller the longer the barrel gets. So let's look at something heavy like a 77 grain round from Sierra Match King. With this, you can see that it's kind of telling the same story overall. As you've got the shorter barrel, you've still got a bit of speed, and then as the barrel length continues to increase, you can see the velocity gets much higher, but those numbers, those gains get smaller and smaller the longer and longer the barrel gets. You see the pattern here? So from a 10.5 to a 14.5, you're picking up these huge chunks in velocity, sometimes 60 to 80 feet per second per inch. But once you get past 16 inches, you're lucky to get 20 or 30 feet per second per extra inch. Past about 18 to 20 inches on a 5.56 AR-15, you're basically just adding weight and heat with not much of a real speed benefit unless you're really taking this thing out far. So why does the velocity actually matter? Well, there's two big reasons. First, you've got terminal performance. Most 5.56 bullets are designed to yaw and fragment inside of a target, but they only do that reliably above a certain speed, which is usually around 2,500 to 2,700 feet per second in most cases, depending on the bullet and in a perfect world. Drop below that threshold and you lose a lot of your stopping power. That's why a 10.5-inch barrel with a 77 grain ammo still works great out to 300 yards if you're a skilled shooter, but at 500 yards, the bullet is slower, it doesn't expand or fragment in the same way. Second, you've got trajectory and wind resistance. Higher velocity is going to mean a flatter shooting bullet that fights the wind better and drops less over great distances. That makes hits easier at longer ranges without constant elevation adjustments being made inside of your optic. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Ammo and bullet weight will actually interact differently with barrel lengths. Light, fast bullets like your 55 grain lose a higher percentage of their velocity when you go with a shorter barrel, but they're already screaming fast to begin with, so it kind of works out in the end. Heavy bullets like a 77 grain or a 69 grain, nice, actually benefit more from every extra inch of barrel because they need that sustained push to reach a more ideal velocity. Now, let's talk about the effective range implications of that real quick, because it's important. This is probably a part of this subject where some of you are already heading down to the comment section to tell me that I'm wrong, but I'm speaking from my own personal experience here, not just something that I read in the ballistic charts. With a 10.5 to 11.5 inch barrel, you're still very, very effective at about 400 to 500 yards with very good ammunition. You can ring steel or make solid hits on a man-sized target all day long as you've put in the work yourself, but you're giving up some of the fragmentation and energy once you get past about that 300 yard mark. The bullet is simply moving slower when it arrives, so it doesn't yaw and fragment as reliably inside of the target, which is why you see people favoring these on the rifles they're building for close-in work like CQB or home defense, or even those truck guns that CJ loves so much. But now you start talking about a 14.5 or 16-inch barrel, you're really in what's known as that sweet spot for most people and for general purpose work. This is the barrel length that the military spent billions of dollars and decades of time perfecting for combat applications. So official doctrine lists the M4's maximum effective range at 500 meters or roughly 550 yards for a point target. In the real world though, with modern optics and heavier match ammo, a competent shooter is regularly going to be able to make effective hits at 600 or 700 yards and even beyond that depending on the skill of the shooter. You're also going to get reliable fragmentation at that barrel length out to 500 or 600 yards too. When you step up to 18-inch and longer barrels, you're really squeezing the most possible out of the 5.56 cartridge. These lengths give you a noticeably flatter trajectory and they keep the bullet supersonic longer. In skilled hands with really good glass and quality ammo, you can push consistent and effective performance out to 750 and even 850 yards or more before the bullet goes transonic and becomes much less predictable. The official military maximum effective range numbers are written for the average soldier under combat stress with basic sights. With a quality optic, good ammunition, and solid marksmanship fundamentals, most of us can stretch these distances much further than the book says, but we do still have to be honest about the trade-offs. Shorter barrels give up velocity and terminal performance sooner, while longer barrels are going to give you more reach at the cost of additional weight and reduced maneuverability. This can also be a game changer just past the basic ballistic performance when you're using a rifle in a work environment. Let's talk about how barrel lengths actually feel in your hands, because at the end of the day, a lot of us are going to make our decision when we're doing a build based on just this piece of information alone. I know I did when I was doing up this Daniel Defense Mark 18. Every inch of barrel adds noticeable weight out at the muzzle end of your rifle. A 20-inch barrel with a standard contour can feel like you're shouldering a broomstick compared to like a 14.5-inch barrel on the same exact rifle build from here back. Military guys who run the iconic Mark 18 love how the weight stays back near the receiver. It lets them maneuver through tight spaces, and transition between fighting stances as they flow through a shoot house or work in a CQB environment. On the flip side though, long-range shooters like my buddy Bill and hunters like our buddy Jordan out in the back often run these 18 to 20-inch barrels because that extra length helps give them more stability when they're in the prone position, just glassing for targets over a super long period of time. The balance point changes dramatically with barrel length, and that's before we even talk about barrel profiles, guys. A pencil-thin, lightweight barrel versus a heavy SOCOM or bull contour barrel makes a huge difference in how the rifle handles too, but we're gonna save that discussion for episode 4 of the series, so hang in there. Another thing to consider here is how the rifle is going to physically change while shooting because of the barrel length. And this is something that a lot of people don't ever think about when they're doing their first pistol or short barrel rifle build. Shorter barrels are louder, point blank and period, guys. When that high pressure gas exits a 10.3, a 10.5, or even a 13.7 barrel, it doesn't have the time to fully burn, so you get a larger fireball and a much sharper crack on the dangerous end of the rifle. When it comes to going with an extra short barrel, it's almost always, in my opinion, worth just going for the second stamp and getting yourself a suppressor for the end of that thing too, because trust me, it makes a noticeable difference. Without doing any changes to your recoil management, you're also gonna have a bit more felt recoil on these shorter barrel systems. If you've ever shot a smaller micro compact handgun before, then you've probably heard the adjective snappy used here. And that follows through with the short barreled rifles, but not as much because you should still have good recoil management built into your AR-15. What you are gonna notice though is slightly less muzzle rise. And one of the benefits of having a shorter barrel is there's less muzzle to rise, which makes the rifle easier to control when you're shooting it. Now, barrel length doesn't just change how far your bullet flies or how fast things fall over on the table. It changes how the rifle feels in your hands, how quick you can move with it, and how long you can comfortably shoot it before fatigue starts to set in and really affect you as a shooter. So you really have to find the balance based on your individual needs for the specific firearm that you're selecting the barrel for. All right, rapid fire time. I'm gonna cover every single common barrel length that exists on the market right now that I know about, and I'm gonna give you my honest opinion on each one. To assist me in this endeavor and to make it a little bit less biased, my buddy CJ, who some of you guys might know, is gonna step on a set and we're gonna run this in a rapid fire scenario. All right, CJ, get over here. All right, you guys all know CJ. We're gonna work through this pretty quick. CJ, 7.5, what's your opinion? Go.
You know, I would say that 7.5 is great if I'm building something like a 300 Blackout. I think that's great, but for 5.56, I honestly think you're losing too much velocity if you're doing it that way. If you're gonna go with 7.5 inch, if you're trying to do something that short, just go with a different cartridge, 300 Blackout or something else.
Totally agree. I think 7.5 is great if you're building like a backpack gun.
You're a big Mark 18 guy, I'm aware, so what about 10.3 inches?
So I built a Daniel Defense Mark 18 a while ago. I love that caliber. I built it for hunting pigs. We were shooting about 50 yards, so it was perfect for that. I put a Surefire RC3 on the end of that thing. It's been great. I've taken it out to 300 pretty easily. It'll reach 300.
300 yards?
On there,
wow,
yeah.
Wow.
But you get past 300, and I'm like aiming with the 500 line on the Stadia, my ACOG. So not so great, but yeah, it does its job.
Okay,
so.
for sure.
What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I really like shooting your Mark 18. I think that's really nice. The 10.3 barrel in it's great, but I don't see myself personally spending that amount of money on one AR. I feel like I could build 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 with that. What even really is the difference between like 10.5 and 10.3?
Not really making a measurable difference in the velocity or anything. It's really just about the stance of the firearm. So if, we'll throw some B-roll up on screen of my Mark 18. If you just imagine that with an extra 0.2 inches between the RC3 and the handguard. So you just get a little bit more of a gap. Just depends on what you personally like. That's what I think anyways. Someone can feel free to correct me down in the comments, but I don't think there's a measurable difference between like a 10.3 and a 10.5. Same with a 13.7 and a 13.9.
So it all depends if you want it flush up against that handguard, or if you want like an extra 0.2 inches off.
Right, it just depends on what muzzle device you're using.
So what about a 11.5 inch barrel? I mean, that's like king of the SBRs for a lot of people. I don't know if it is for me, but I mean, when you combine it with like a law folder. I mean, you're already getting like better dwell time, things like that, better velocity than like a 10.3 or a 7.5.
I can see people sprinting down to the comments to disagree with you, to tell you about how much better 12.5 is over that.
Go ahead and do it, guys. Tell me why I'm wrong.
If I were personally doing an 11.5-inch barrel, it would be because I'm trying to tuck the suppressor with like a Hawk XL or a Spear XL or something. So
I see. Yep.
Then it'd be great for that, because you get like a 6-inch suppressor on an 11.5 with a 15-inch suppressor ready handguard. You get like just a little bit of the suppressor peeking out. That looks really clean to me. But
you could put your lights out in front, all that stuff, mitigate that suppressor shadow.
Right, but I mean, that's probably the only reason why I'd go with an 11.5, just because I want the exact measurement on the suppressor to line up, right? Just like that video you did, what was like 2 weeks ago, you were talking about the formula. That's why I would pick an 11.5, personally.
Okay.
I'm sure other people would disagree, because we're in the SBR battle zone. Like, you start talking about 12.5, right? Like 12.5 would be the next one to talk about, and a lot of people would see 12.5 and they're like, I don't really get it. But to me, that's really the king for SBRs is the 12.5.
Is it? Okay.
You're getting the maximum velocity, the maximum dwell time that you can get. And with the 12.5, there's no question, right? Like, it's an SBR. You're not gonna pin and weld 4.5-inch muzzle device on there to make it
a really long linear compensator. You know, I like those, but you're not going to pin and weld that.
What do you think about 12.5?
12.5. What do I think about 12.5? I'm kind of interested by this, because what's the difference between 12.5 and like 13.7? You know, it's like what is an extra 1.2 inches or something? What difference does that really make?
Okay, Hillary.
What difference does it make?
We could say that about anything, right? Like what's an extra 1.2 inches? Like, we could do that all the way up to, we have a 24-inch barrel. You know. So it's really about the pin and weld. So 13.7 is like really, really good for pin and weld. So 12.5, you're like really, like I said earlier, you're pin and welding like 4.5 inches onto the end of the barrel.
So over the last year or so, Josh, I've seen people talk about 13.7. Is that like no questions asked?
So 13.7 is kind of the new kid on the block, 13.7, 13.9, and it's really, there's a Surefire and a dead air muzzle device that get 13.7 to 16 inches. So you can get a 13.7 barrel, it's suppressor ready, and the muzzle device is pinned and welded. So that's really the real main thing behind it. Now, there's going to be a lot of people in the comments like, well, 13.7 gives me like the perfect muzzle velocity. And it's like, well, go watch the Paul Harrell video. Like, if you can tell the difference between a round going, 2,800 feet per second versus 2,850 feet per second, like, please tell me who you are. Are you like the Will Smith and the Suicide Squad, maybe? And that's extreme spread for you. I don't know, but for me, what I think it is I have a short barrel. It's suppressor ready. And there's no NFA process required, because the barrel's technically 16 inches.
Yeah, because of the pin and weld.
And your suppressor is sitting much farther back than if it was on like a traditional 16-inch barrel.
I see.
If you're not going through the SBR process, 14.5 is really the most proven barrel length out there. It's billions of defense dollars spent on 14.5, and it's, I mean, by now it's got, the entire global war on terror with 14.5s and whatever we're doing now. So all of it's on there. So it's 14.5 is, in my opinion, if made to choose between 13.7 and 14.5, personally I'm picking the 14.5.
Sure.
But at the same time, then you get into this really annoying space where the 14.5 pin and weld muzzle devices aren't as good as some of the 13.7 ones for doing a suppressor.
For you, it's 14.5 or bust. Is that kind of what you would say?
Right, because if I'm going to do 13.7, why do 13.7? I'll just do a 12.5 with I'll do the NFA paperwork.
Okay.
I've shot 13.7s and 13.9s. Sons of Liberty Gunworks is actually a company that makes a really good 13.7. Their firearm is outstanding, but like, why not just go with the 14.5? But then you end up on a DDM for V7 with their pin and weld muzzle device. That's not suppressor ready. Man, that's a nightmare. To fix that,
undo a pin and weld is like,
you have to send it to a special manufacturer. They're gonna take their muzzle device, take the old muzzle device off, and then pin and weld a new one on there so that it's still 16 inches. It's a pain. So what about you? What do you think about 14.5?
So 14.5 to me is goated for all the reasons that you kind of laid out. I mean, it's got all this money, all this time laid into it from the defense or the war industry, whichever one you want to call it. And it's like one of the most proven ones out there outside of 16 or 20 inches. I mean, you kind of you see the history there. It goes from like, 20 to 16 to 14.5. To me, that's great, and it's a great balance between velocity, but then also length and weight as well. That's something that we haven't talked about that much. But I think if it's me and I'm not taking into account like NFA stuff, I might go 14.5 over 16 inches almost every day because I just would rather have a little bit shorter of a barrel. Okay, Josh, so then what about 16
So I think
inches?
16 is probably the best barrel.
Okay.
And I say that because I like to build. I like to build firearms. And with a 16-inch barrel, I don't have to do anything extra. I can put whatever muzzle device I want on the end of it. I don't have to pin and weld it. I can change that muzzle device out. I like to build firearms, and that's why I think,
you could put a stock on it, no problems.
There's no drama. That's personally why I think 16 inches is the best barrel. Do I think, like overall, for like use for a gun I want to grab every day and go fight with or something? Probably not my favorite, but I like the 16-inch barrel because no drama when I'm building with it. Now the NFA goes away and you can ask me this question again.
Sure.
You might get a different answer, but for right now, 16 inches is the king of barrels.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I would agree with you. I think, especially for people looking to build their first AR, I think 16's definitely the way to go. It's like the parts out there, there's all kinds of parts out there. The most common, when you're talking about tuning, buffers, springs, all that stuff is basically built for a 16-inch gun, really, at the end of the day. And so they're just super easy to work with. Like you said, no tax paperwork, tax stamp stuff, no extra stuff. You don't have to worry about your local laws with pistol braces or anything like that changing up. It's just kind of future-proofed and, seems to me like the most versatile in terms of distance, close-up, anything else you can throw, almost whatever optic you want on there, and it will pretty much work. Yeah, 16
So
inches
what
is
about
great.
what about the long boys? I think maybe we're both missing a beat by just going to 16, but like Bill, he swears by that 18-inch barrel on his gun. What do you think about 18, 20, 24-inch barrels, all those crazy long ones?
So I really like Bill's 18-inch AR. It looked sweet. We'll throw some B-roll of it right here, but it was awesome to shoot and really fun, smooth to shoot. He had a suppressor on that, everything else. But honestly, if you're going 18 or 20 inches or any of this stuff with a 5.56, I feel like there's not much performance gain on that. Like maybe you're talking an extra, 20 feet per second FPS, something like that.
At that point, it's like, all right, maybe we should talk about going to an AR-10 and getting maybe a 308 round and trying to stretch that out because, 308s maybe is not the best round in the world for shooting extreme
You can get
long range.
800,000 yards if you're pretty good.
And the thing with 308 is you're going to have to fight the bullet. So you'll really master those fundamentals. And that's, something Rob Furlong taught us.
That's right.
Canada, so.
Your extreme spread, everything else.
Yeah. Or if you really want to shoot long range, just get a bolt gun.
Yeah.
Get out of here, CJ. I gotta talk about the law real quick to finish this video.
All right.
Barrel length isn't just about performance, guys. We have to take into consideration what is and isn't legal when we're doing these builds. And I want you all to have a better understanding of this too, so we're gonna talk about it just real fast. National Firearms Act, or the NFA, is the main set of federal rules that governs short-barreled rifles. Here's the simple version. If you have a barrel that's shorter than 16 inches and you put a shoulder stock on that rifle, it becomes what is known as a short-barreled rifle, or an SBR for short. That makes it an NFA regulated item, which requires a tax stamp, an extensive background check, and registration with the ATF. It's not illegal, but it does come with extra steps, and whatever a $0 tax stamp is as of 2026. Hopefully it's not a $4,000 tax stamp a year from now, we'll see. This is where things split into two main categories: pistol builds and rifle builds. A pistol build is any AR with a barrel under 16 inches that does not have a shoulder stock. Instead, most people are going to run a pistol brace, and some people might just leave the buffer tube exposed. A conventional rifle build is anything with a barrel 16 inches or longer, or any shorter barrel that has a stock but meets the legal length requirements through other means. This is the cleanest and safest route for most people who don't want to deal with NFA paperwork. But there are a few other ways to go around running shorter barrels on rifle builds without going through all of the extra hassle of working your way through NFA steps. The most common and reliable method is using a pin and weld. This is something that CJ and I were referencing earlier. This is where you take the muzzle device like a flash hider, a muzzle brake, or a suppressor mount, and you have it permanently pinned and welded onto the barrel so that the overall measured length of the barrel reaches 16 inches or more. Once it's properly pinned and welded, the ATF considers that muzzle device permanently part of the barrel. This is by far the most popular way to run a 13.7 or a 14.5. You can do that legally without a stamp because it's permanently affixed to the end of the barrel. Braces are another option that people use on pistol builds, but the rules around them have been in flux a lot over the past 5 or 6 years. A lot of people still run them, myself included, but you have to understand the current ATF position and try to keep yourself up to date on all of your local laws so that you can make sure you're always staying compliant with those federal and local regulations. Bottom line, guys, know the rules before you build. If you're unsure about any of this, the smartest thing you can do is talk to someone who really knows and understands NFA law, especially in your state, or reach out to a professional gunsmith or FFL who deals with this stuff regularly. An ounce of research will get you a long way, and I guarantee your local FFL will probably be more than happy to help you navigate this process. Choosing the right barrel length is a lot like choosing the right car for whatever job you're currently working on. You wouldn't daily drive a lifted 4x4 truck through downtown Manhattan, and you wouldn't try to haul a trailer full of lumber in a tiny 2-seater sports car like CJ's Honda. It's the same thing here. A 10.5 or a 12.5 is your nimble little sports car. They're quick, they're agile, they're perfect for tight spaces. You got a 13.7 to a 16-inch barrel. It's like your reliable daily driver. Does everything pretty well without any drama, just gets you places. And then you've got your 18 and your 20-inch barrels, which are like your long-haul highway cruisers that are built for stretching your legs when the distance matters more than your individual maneuverability. There's no single best barrel length. It all comes down to what you actually need that rifle to do day in and day out. I have 6 nearly identical barrels sitting on the table in front of me. They're all 16 inches. They're all 5.56 or 2.23. Yet every single one of these barrels feels completely different in your hands and performs differently when you're shooting. This barrel right here weighs almost nothing. This one is a SOCOM profile barrel for cool guys who do cool guy stuff. And this one is a government profile barrel for guys who think they do cool guy stuff. And this one has flutes, but I can't play hot cross buns on it. And this beast right here feels like I don't even need the rest of the rifle. I could probably just club someone with it in a home invasion situation. If you've ever found yourself getting confused while looking at barrel profiles on the internet, I feel your pain. Forums, Reddit, YouTube, everyone swears that their favorite barrel type is the only right answer out there. And part of what you're hearing is just 40-year-old myths and bro science based on feels. Today, let's talk about barrel profiles and end the confusion from this selection once and for all. If you've been watching this barrel series so far, you already know that we've covered a lot of ground since we started. Episode 1 was all about materials that go into making your barrel, and episode 2 covered your rifling, your twist rate, and how the barrels are actually made. And then in episode 3, we showed you how barrel length actually affects velocity, ballistics, and the handling of your rifle, and even the laws that govern the rifle itself. Now, I know we've cleared up a few myths already, but there's still one topic that starts more arguments than just about anything else. And guys, that's barrel profiles. Today, in episode 4 of the AT3 Tactical Barrel Series, we're gonna settle it. Let's go. Now I've got these 6 different 16-inch barrels lined up right here so that you can see the real difference in each profile for yourself while we talk. But by the time we're done here, you're gonna know exactly what each profile actually does and which ones are worth the money for your very specific and individual needs. As always, let's start at the beginning. The story, as with most stories about the AR-15, starts with Papa Eugene Stoner and the very first AR-15s that eventually became the standard issue M16. You see, the US military was desperate to replace the M14. That thing weighed in at about 11 pounds loaded and required troops to carry a ton of 7.62 ammunition out in the dense jungle terrain of Vietnam. It was far from an ideal situation for those guys. Stoner, who was an aircraft engineer by trade, had a radically different idea. What if you take the service rifle and make it lighter, using modern materials and a smaller, high-velocity cartridge that cuts weight so the troops in the field can carry way more of it while still being highly mobile while they're out in that jungle terrain? This is where the original AR-15 or M16 enters the picture. Part of keeping the rifle as light as possible was using what is known today as a pencil barrel profile. They had a super thin walls that were just a hair over 5/8 of an inch in diameter, going the whole way down, making it crazy light in comparison to the heavier barrels of the previous M14 that troops were being issued before this thing ever made it over to the jungle of Vietnam. But if we fast forward just 20 years to the 1980s, the United States Marine Corps decided that they needed a better barrel for their riflemen, and they had a couple of good reasons for it too. First, the Marines needed something better for sustained fire. In their world, in the Marine Corps world, the rifle company lives and breathes by the rates of fire. Their doctrine calls for the average rifleman to keep sustained rates of fire going downrange towards the enemy for very long periods of time while other groups of Marines maneuver on the suppressed targets. But the Marines also demand accuracy with their high rate of fire. So that means they wanted thicker barrels that would handle the heat of sustained fire better than the traditional pencil barrels that came on the original design of the rifle. Second, the Marine Corps' armorers thought that the Marines were doing Marine things to the barrel. It wasn't uncommon for heavily used barrels at this stage to fail drop gauge tests in the armory, which led to the armorers to believe that the Marines were just using the barrels so hard in the field that the pencil profile barrels were literally bending to the point of extreme failure. It was either from sling tension back when the slings were still used as stabilizing devices in marksmanship, or because the Marines were using the barrels as pry bars to open crates of crayons or something, I guess. I don't know. But as it turns out, that drop gauge test produced a bit of a misdiagnosis. According to some sources, the real culprit stemmed from copper buildup at the gas port sticking to the gauge, not the barrels being bent by just old crusty jar heads. Unfortunately, by the time this got figured out, the front half of the barrel had already been thickened to create the original government M4 profile spec, and it was just kind of a thing until SOCOM looked into it and discovered that the real problem with those thin barrels was back here by the chamber. You have to remember, back in the early days of AR-15 manufacturing, we didn't have the technology that we have today. If you think back to episode 1 and 2 in this series, you'll remember that I talked a lot about the modern rifling and stress relieving processes that are used in barrel manufacturing. That technology and knowledge base wasn't as strong as it is today back in the 1960s through the 1980s. So what you got was a barrel that didn't handle stress and heat very well, which would cause stringing of shot groups, which is when your shot walks up and down the target when the barrel starts to heat up. But if you fast forward to today, or you check out episode 1 and 2 of this series, you'll see that with the modern stress relief, better steels, and tighter quality control measures, the pencil barrels of today can perform quite a bit better than their Vietnam era ancestors. Okay, so I'm throwing a lot at you already, but what even is a barrel profile exactly? It's simply the shape and thickness of the barrel along its length, and how it tapers or steps from the chamber end all the way down to the muzzle. We measure it by the outside diameter at the key spots, right in front of the chamber, which is the thickest because that's where the pressure is highest, and then under the handguard at the gas block and out at the muzzle. Now, a pencil barrel might stay around 0.625 inches the whole length of the barrel, and an H-bar or a heavy profile barrel can jump up to 0.920 inches or more under the handguards for that extra rigidity and the heat sink, but it's all about balancing the weight and stiffness of the barrel to maximize the ballistic performance of the barrel itself. Now that you know what a barrel profile actually is, let's talk about what these profiles can actually do for you when you're making a selection and building your own AR-15. There's 4 big performance factors that change depending on how thick or thin your barrel is. And I'm gonna show you each one using the 6 barrels sitting right here in front of me today. First, and arguably most important and obvious for how your rifle feels, is the weight and the balance. If you take this pencil barrel, it's got almost no weight to it, which is gonna keep the front end of your rifle super quick to swing and engage targets and easy to carry all day for when you're doing super long matches or going out into the woods to hunt something. Contrast that with this crowbar, H-bar, and you can see how it would increase the front end weight of your rifle by quite a bit. If you're dominantly shooting off of a bench or in the prone, this might be what you want, but your arms are gonna be feeling this barrel weight over a super long session down at your local 3-gun match if you're running this bad mamma jamma right here. Long story short, the profile of the barrel is gonna decide where the balance point of your rifle is. With a lighter barrel, more of the weight is gonna be in the back towards your body, whereas the heavier barrel is putting that weight out in front of you down at the end of the rifle. Second, the profile is gonna be the determining factor in how the barrel handles heat and sustained rapid fire. Now here on AT3 Tactical, we've talked about the cycle of operations before. Every time you pull the trigger, you're igniting the primer and cooking off powder inside of the casing to create a superheated gas to push around down the barrel. That heat and energy is going to soak into the barrel every single time you pull the trigger. The more barrel material you have, the better that barrel is gonna be at absorbing that energy and keeping your groups tight down at the dangerous end of the barrel. A thin pencil barrel like this one has very little steel to work with, so it's gonna heat up fast. If you start shooting a rapid fire string with one of these, you might see your groups open up or string vertically. When that happens, if you shoot enough to make it happen, that is, it's the barrel getting soft because of the excess heat. Now with a thicker barrel profile like the SOCOM or the H-bar, you essentially have built-in heat sinks for all of that thermal and kinetic energy. That's why the military went heavier in most cases with their standard issue rifles, because they need high volume barrels that can withstand heat without losing any accuracy over prolonged fights where hundreds to thousands of rounds of ammunition are being expended in a single long sitting. Now, heat management is probably one of the biggest reasons that people still argue about barrel profiles on the internet today. But I don't want to take a hard line stance here. I just want you guys to understand the thermal facts of life in the event you didn't already, which is the entire reason why we're making this barrel profiles video. That said, barrel stiffness, accuracy, and barrel whip is the third of the 4 performance factors that I need you to take into consideration when you're choosing a barrel. It's not something that you can easily see, but it does make a difference based on your intended use case for the rifle that you're building. The thicker the barrel material or the heavier the barrel profile, the higher the stiffness of the barrel itself. When a bullet accelerates down the barrel, the whole thing has to flex just a tiny bit. We call this flexing the barrel whip. And the stiffer your barrel is, the less you're gonna experience that barrel whip, which can cause some inconsistency over longer ranges and during heavier rates of fire. Here's the part that most people get wrong, and that's cold bore accuracy. On that very first shot of the day when your barrel's still cold, the one that actually matters when you're hunting or you're in a surprise defensive situation, or for most of us, it is, like I said, just that first shot out of the range. The barrel is gonna be stone cold, just like they are right here in front of me, room temperature. A good heavy barrel is going to shoot basically the same as a pencil barrel. The profile doesn't magically make that first round more accurate. What really decides your cold bore precision is the barrel's quality, how straight the bore is, how good the rifling and the stress relief in the barrel are, how well the barrel is crowned, and of course, how good the shooter's fundamental marksmanship is, not how fat the barrel is. So where the heavy barrel really wins is once the barrel starts heating up. That extra stiffness keeps the barrel whip under control and stops the groups from opening up or stringing when the barrel starts to get really hot. So if you're running rapid fire, shooting a long stage, or doing high round count training, the thicker barrel stays tighter longer than your thinner barrels. But for most of us, realistically, just shooting simple 5.56 for 20 to 50 rounds at a time on a single stage, the cold bore difference is basically invisible on the AR-15 platform. You'd really have to be getting into like larger caliber bolt guns for it to have any measured difference over 10 rounds. Last, we need to talk about the felt recoil. The barrel doesn't make nearly as big of a difference as, say, your buffer and gas system do, but it does have a marginal impact. Here, just like in every stage before, more material usually means a better overall experience for the shooter. But You got to remember that you're gaining performance at the cost of adding weight and usually cost to the end of your rifle. Now, let's get practical. I'm going to pick up each one of these 6 barrels and tell you exactly what each one does the best and who it's really made for. For this specific task, we're using all Faxon and Ballistic Advantage barrels because it's what I just happen to have on hand over on my workbench. But that doesn't mean other barrel manufacturers suck. It just means it's what I grabbed from my workbench today when we were setting up to film. So don't take it personally if you're not a Faxon or a Ballistic Advantage fan. That's what I got. All right, stick with me here, guys. I know this video is getting kind of long, so if you have questions, drop them down in the comment section, and myself or CJ will make shorts to answer them. If you've got a question that's good enough, we might pull it over to our podcast, which you can find by searching the AT3 Armory up in the YouTube search bar. We'd love to see you over on that channel. We get into some pretty heated discussions. All right. Let's hit this rapid fire real quick. Pencil barrels. You might also hear these barrels being called lightweight barrels, A1 barrels, or ELW profile barrels. This is really the original M16 barrel style. It's got super thin walls. It is usually in that 0.625 inch category for the whole length of the barrel. And I know it seems like I've been dogging on these a bit for the first part of this discussion, but guys, I assure you that these things really do have their place. If you're looking for maximum weight savings and speed and you want your rifle to feel very light and quick in your hands, this is really where you want to be. Hunting, hiking, 3-gun, home defense, throw it in your get home bag, or really any build where you want to save as much weight as possible, this is your go-to barrel. That said, I know we mentioned that the early M16 barrels had some issues. Let me be the first to tell you that modern manufacturing has alleviated a lot of the drama. Or I'm probably not the first to tell you, but I'm telling you again anyways. Proper stress relief on the manufacturing floor combined with free float handguards have made these things lightweight do-everything barrels, especially if you're keeping your round counts relatively low in your shooting sessions. I mean, if that sounds like you, then the pencil barrel might be exactly what you need. Government or M4 profile barrels. All right, so now we're firmly in the 0.750 inch zone here. This is your classic stepped barrel that many of us have been building with since the 1990s. The profile is thin under the handguard and thicker up front where the front sight post sits. You might also have a notch towards the front of your barrel, and that was or still is for attaching underbarrel attachments like a master key shotgun or the M203 grenade launcher. I think there's a couple of companies that have those now. Honestly, these are super drippy if you're doing a clone. They've been used on millions of rifles over the last 40 or so years, so they aren't bad barrels. Yeah, I said that. You're getting old, Greg. That 40-year-old statement hurt my heart too, but this is also where the myth comes into play on the .gov profile barrel. And believe me, I've been victim to this myself. I used to believe it, but that myth is government profile is the gold standard because the military uses it. Spoiler, it was never engineered for accuracy or heat reduction. It was a quick fix done in the 1980s that stuck around because Uncle Sam at the government moved slow. It's actually thin where the barrel gets hottest, right behind the gas block, so it generally heats up faster than it should and kind of gives you the worst of both worlds for most civilians, in my opinion. But man, it really does look cool. And if you're doing any kind of underbarrel attachment whatsoever, like I just mentioned, like a master key or a 203, this is usually gonna be your best bet because this notch usually interfaces with that part of the system that you're installing underneath of it. And that leads us into our SOCOM barrels. For me and most of my use cases, this is the true gold standard for barrels. It's thicker under the handguard and tapers down a bit towards the muzzle. And it's really a great middle ground between the pencil barrel and the H-bar. It's perfect for those duty use guns or really for anyone that wants to run super long strings without the rifle turning into a huge boat anchor on the front of your rifle. In my opinion, it's the smartest compromise that's sitting on the table here in front of me. You get way more heat resistance and stiffness than the pencil barrel here, and it's gonna run a bit cooler and stay more consistent during rapid fire, but it sheds a lot of the excess material and weight from the thicker barrel systems that we have here and that are out on the market today. To sum it up, the SOCOM basically looked at the old government profile and said, you idiots, you put the meat in the wrong place. And then they moved the thickness back here near the chamber where it's supposed to be, where the real heat builds up, and they gave it way overall better balance. If you shoot a mix of range days, some with rapid fire, and you want your rifle to also stay light enough that you actually enjoy carrying it with you, this is probably the barrel profile that I would most recommend. But again, it depends on what you're doing. H-bar. You might also hear these called heavy barrels or bull barrels or varmint profile barrels. These things are tanks. There's really no better way to describe this thing. We're usually talking about the same profile as the pencil barrel, but instead of a 0.625 inch profile, you're looking at 0.920 inches of steel underneath the handguards. With all of that extra steel, you're getting heat management and stiffness that's just like your favorite Instagram influencer. On steroids. You're also maximizing the barrel's ability to stay accurate through high round counts, and you're minimizing the felt recoil impulse to the maximum by adding all the extra weight. But only if you tune your gas system and tailor your buffer system appropriately to go with it. So maybe check out this video on buffers from CJ. Bench rush shooters, prone shooters doing competitions over range, and varmint hunting guys out in Wyoming are the real target builder for these barrels. It's kind of why they call it the varmint barrel, but they're really great if you need maximum weight. The myth here is that heavier always means more accurate. Now, on a cold bore shot, that's not exactly the case. But once the barrel gets hot or you're running rapid fire strings, yeah, this thing is gonna stay locked in while your lighter barrels are gonna start to walk sooner, because on the bull barrel, there's more material to dissipate that heat and handle the thermal and kinetic energy being produced by all of those shots. If you shoot a lot of rounds in one sitting, or you're competing in high power rifle matches, this is probably your go-to barrel. I'd also consider the H-bar system if you're running super hot ammunition, or if you're starting to get into the higher calibers on the AR-15 platform. There's a reason that ELR guys like to run them thick barrels. Okay, so let's get just a little weird for a minute and talk about some of the modern hybrid barrels that are out there. This specifically is a gunner barrel from Faxon. A lot of hybrids like this exist today. You've got Hansen, Core, S2W. I can go on and on and on. All the cool new stuff that's been coming out every single year. But basically what's going on with these modern hybrids is that you have barrel subject matter experts who have been manufacturing and designing AR-15 barrels for close to 4 decades now. And their engineers have some ideas on how to build a better mousetrap or fix the mistakes that the .gov has made in their procurement processes over the last 40 years. And that's really where these ones come from. What we've got here are barrels that try and usually succeed in being the best of all worlds. They're gonna be lighter than your H-bar barrels, but stronger than your pencil barrels. And they're gonna be better designed than the mass-produced government and SOCOM profiles, with great balance and stiffness and heat management. When we're talking about the gunner barrel profile specifically, we're basically combining the government profile and the pencil profile to make an ultra lightweight barrel. Now, I can't speak to all of these hybrids that are out there today because I'm gonna tell you the truth, I haven't shot even half of them because I'm a SOCOM profile fanboy. But if you want CJ and I to go out to the range this summer and shoot every single one of these hybrid profile barrels that we can get our hands on, let me know down in the comment section and we'll gladly make that video. I bet CJ'd love to get out on the range and shoot some weird barrels, especially if we put them in 300 blackout or something. For now, all I can talk about is the gunner profile barrel, which I've shot, and it really combines these two barrels like I was talking about, while trying to remove the weakness of both and play to the strengths of each. Last, but definitely not least, we have got the specialty or the modified barrels, like this bad mamma jamma right here. A lot of manufacturers have these available, but again, guys, this is an area where I don't have nearly as much experience as I would like to talk about it with you guys, like I have any kind of authority on the subject. What I do know is that the fluting in these barrels drops weight while adding extra surface area for faster cooling. Basically, it's a lighter barrel that cools down faster in between shots because these flutes dissipate the thermal energy better. From my understanding, these are for guys who want to shave every ounce possible while still running super hard with the barrel. They're great for competition shooting, they're great for long heights, or even doing suppressed builds where heat is a serious concern. But with that said, you are trading some of the rigidity and stiffness of the barrel for a little bit of weight savings, and just keep in mind, it's a specialty manufacturing process to do this, so you're gonna pay for it. They're not cheap. All right, I want you to take a step back and imagine that your barrels are all the suspension of your car. You've got to match up the suspension system with the intended purpose of the vehicle so that you can keep the ride right. You don't want to slap soft street coils on a race car because you can't expect it to stay pinned to the track when you're pushing it hard through all those turns. So think of barrels like this. Your pencil barrel is really just a lightweight racing suspension that's meant for super quick responsiveness and minimal weight on the vehicle that you're driving super hard. It might get a little loosey-goosey when things heat up on the track, but guys, that's what pit stops are for. A government profile is that really cool old school suspension from the 1980s that looks just super dope. And it worked well enough back in the day, but it doesn't really do anything as well as the modern systems that are out there today. Now with your modern hybrids and the SOCOM profile, you got that well-tuned street performance suspension for your daily driver. It's got excellent balance and it just soaks up the punishment while keeping everything super fun to drive. Then you got your heavy duty towing suspension. That's the H-bar or the bull barrel right there. It's rock solid when you're really working hard and ready to just take a massive load of abuse so you can get the job done at the end of the day. Bottom line, guys, there is a best barrel profile for the rifle that you're building, depending on what you're doing, but there isn't a best overall barrel profile. Don't let a 40-year-old myth or a forum science bro make that decision for you. Use the information that we gave you here today and throughout this entire barrel series so far to make that decision based on what you know you're going to be doing with the rifle that you're building. The year is 1966. You're an 18-year-old fresh out of high school, hunkered down in a foxhole in Vietnam with a company of NVA regulars closing in on your position. Before insertion to your patrol base, your platoon was issued brand new M16s and bandoliers of the cheapest available 5.56 ammunition. In the middle of the fight, most of your guys in the platoon aren't returning fire, they're clearing malfunctions from their M16s. Cases are failing to extract and they're stuck in tight, pitted chambers. Your team leader swaps rifles with you and tells you to clear the malfunction with some of your cleaning rods. But your rifle never shipped with a cleaning kit because the rifle was pushed as self-cleaning. And by the time you improvise with your pocket knife to clear the jam, he's got your rifle gummed up with ammunition. The enemy's closing in, your machine gunners are burning through their last belts of ammunition, and the rest of your platoon is desperately fighting their own jammed rifles instead of fighting the enemy because rushed procurement, dirty ball powder ammo, zero issued cleaning kits or training, and the decision to skip chrome line chambers turn this promising new ultralight rifle into a battlefield liability. Now, fast forward to 2026. You might be watching a YouTube video, but the barrel finish is still one of the more important choices you need to make when you're building an AR-15. I'm Josh, and I'll be your host for episode 5 of the AT3 Tactical Barrels Guide. If you've already watched episodes 1 through 4, then you already have a solid understanding of barrel materials, rifling, twist rate, manufacturing processes, barrel lengths, and even barrel profiles. But even though we've covered a lot of ground so far, we're not done quite just yet. Today we're going to tackle the subject of barrel finishes. By the time we're through here today, you're going to have a solid understanding of what finish is right for your build, regardless if you're making a duty gun for work purposes or if you're building a high round count range toy to get yourself to the next level in training. So if you're ready to make sure your barrel never becomes a history lesson, let's get into it. All right, so to start, we have to define what a barrel finish actually is so that everyone is playing from the same level sheet of music. If this is old hat for you, just hang in there with me, guys. We're gonna get to the good stuff in a second. In the AR-15 world, a barrel finish is the specialized protective treatment that's applied to your barrel's steel on both the exterior surface and the interior bore and chamber. Think back to episode 1 of this series where we talked about barrel materials just for a second. The steel has a huge hand in how your barrel is going to perform, but it's not the only part of that manufacturing process that decides how long your barrel is going to make it through heavy use. A barrel manufacturer can take 2 barrels made from the exact same 4150 CMV steel, and those 2 barrels can behave very differently on a micro level once you start shooting, and that's because of the finish. Check it out. The barrel finish is a functional performance treatment. Its job is to help the barrel fight corrosion, reduce wear and friction from repeated shooting, and make it easier to clean and maintain, and to extend the life of the barrel over thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of rounds. There's 3 main categories that you have to think about when it comes to your barrel finish. First, you've got the exterior protection. This is what you're gonna see on the outside of the barrel when it's not hiding underneath of your old A2 handguard. What you'll commonly see here is something like parkerizing, which is what gives your barrel that classic gray look, like this one that I'm holding right here. A really easy way to know if this is what you have on your barrel is looking for surface rust after your rifle has been sitting in a humid environment for a long period of time, or if you're seeing, like on this barrel, oil seeping out of the pores in the metal. Seriously, clean your gun, Greg. Jeez, like, it's not hard. On the flip side of that, you've got your interior lining or the bore lining. This is what's happening on the inside of your barrel and chamber where all the friction takes place from when you're shooting. And it's also what caused all the drama for our guys in Vietnam, since Uncle Sam decided that saving $1 on chrome lining was a good idea. Last, you've got what's called full barrel case hardening, which is a modern all-in-one approach to finishing a barrel, and it's what's most commonly known as a nitride finish. You might also see it listed as a melanite finish or a QPQ finish on some manufacturers' fancy specification sheet, but it's just full barrel case hardening, where the whole thing goes through a high temperature salt bath to infuse the barrel with nitride all in one go. For the manufacturer, applying these to the barrel is a super straightforward process no matter what they're doing. We're gonna get into that just a little bit later, but we have to talk about what finishes are currently out there that you might run into when you're making your barrel decision first. That is really what the bread and butter of this is all about. Manganese phosphate, I don't know how to say this word, so bear with me. Manganese phosphate is first on deck. It sounds pretty fancy, right? But it's really just another way of saying parkerized, which is the exterior only coating that you see on your common mil-spec style barrels like this Geissele one right here. Here's how parkerization works. The process creates a porous surface that soaks up and holds oil. So think of it like a sponge, kinda. The oil that's soaked into these pores protects the exterior of the barrel from rust. The quick way to spot this on a spec sheet is to look for terms like phosphate, parkerized, or manganese phosphate listed under the finish section of the barrel. If it says chrome line 2, then that's when you know you've got that proven finish that's been used on all the dot mill barrels for a super long time. What's good about this is that it's usually combined with the chrome line, which we're going to talk about in a minute, which is going to give you the more heavy duty barrel rated for full auto fire or just super, super heavy use. But on the opposite end of the spectrum, with a parkerized barrel, you've got to stay on top of your maintenance schedules, especially for you guys that are living in super humid environments like Florida or Hawaii or Washington, where, you know, the place where you measure the outside temperature by the amount of water in the air outside. You can usually like feel it between your fingers, you know. If you're not staying on top of oiling a parkerized barrel, the rust on the exterior is going to let you know about it. It should look more like this barrel where you can literally see the oil leaking out of the pores in the metal. Now, I just briefly mentioned chrome line, but I got to talk about that next because it's one of the 3. It's usually what's going to be combined with the parkerization on the interior of the barrel. But here's how it actually works in real life. Manufacturers electroplate a thin, super hard layer of chromium right into the inside of the bore and chamber, adding material to the interior of the barrel itself. It creates an extremely smooth and tough surface that resists heat, fouling, and corrosion from the inside out. Now, when you add that 1,000th of an inch of chromium to the interior of the barrel, some guys say that you're giving up a little bit of accuracy compared to a raw stainless interior like this Faxon barrel or a nitride finish like this one right here, because that plating isn't always perfectly uniform along the whole barrel. But fortunately for us, we live in the year 2026 and modern manufacturing has alleviated that accuracy loss for just about everyone except for the guys who are really trying to min-max the accuracy of their rifle. That said, a chrome-lined barrel is built to be Marine infantry proof. That means you're maximizing your ability to shoot high round counts very fast using all kinds of cheap ammo because the chrome lining was built for punishment. They're also super easy to clean on the interior because the chromium makes it difficult for fouling to stick to the interior of the barrel. Now, if you're not sure what your barrel's lined with, the fastest way to check for a chrome lining is to shine a light right down the barrel. If the bore lights up super bright and shiny with a visible ring at the crown, you're most likely looking at a chrome-lined barrel. It's actually not that hard at all to tell it all. For full barrel case hardening treatment, we're talking about nitride. Now, you might also hear this called something like a melanite or a QPQ salt bath nitriding as well, and I think I might have previously mentioned that. But nitride barrels have really become something of a common standard over the past decade to 15 years or so because of how much faster and easier it is for the manufacturers to apply this finish to the complete barrel. Now, unlike our parkerization and chrome lining, nitride treats the whole barrel all at once, inside, outside, literally everything in between too. The manufacturer takes the barrel and puts it into a high temperature salt bath and then infuses it with nitrogen right into the surface of the steel. This process then further hardens the steel, making it a super hard, low friction skin instead of adding an additional layer of material like with your chrome lining. So just remember, chrome lining is adding material, nitride is just kind of putting a skin over the material and infusing it with nitride. So if you go back to episode 1 of this series, you can see how a nitride finish might actually improve the overall metallurgy of the barrel that you're working with, especially when we're talking about barrels that don't have extra vanadium added into them, or when we're working with something that has a lower carbon content, like our 4140. Remember, the 40 is a lower carbon percentage than the 4150, whereas the 50 is 0.50%. As the entire barrel is treated, you end up with insanely good corrosion resistance on both the inside and the outside of the barrel, and the surface becomes more slippery, which means less friction, less fouling buildup, and a significantly easier to clean barrel. This is really your all-around performance finish that holds your accuracy super well and resists wear nicely too. Bonus points for nitride because while it might not hold up to heat and sustain fire quite as well as your chrome lined barrel, you don't have to baby parkerization with constant oil treatments on the nitrided barrels, and they're usually all coming in at around the same price, if not just a little bit cheaper than the mil spec versions made from the same exact steel. And that's because the nitride finish is a simple single-step process for the manufacturer. Now, these last couple that I'm going to talk about are kind of exceptions and not the rule when it comes to a barrel finish in the AR-15 space. Now, I'm talking about your raw 416R stainless steel barrels, or your diamond-like carbon, or titanium nitrides, or even in some cases, Cerakote. Generally speaking, if you're using a barrel with one of these, it's because you've got a very specific use case in mind for your AR-15, and you need something that's pretty custom fit. But that doesn't mean we're not going to talk about them and just ignore them and not let you guys know that they exist. Now with the 416R stainless steel, for example, you've got a super high chromium content baked right into the metal of the barrel blank. That makes the barrel itself more naturally corrosion resistant, and just like we talked about in episode 1, it makes it super easy to consistently machine with from a manufacturer standpoint, giving you the best raw accuracy potential straight out of the box. That's why with 416R, you're generally seeing it on your precision builds or your varmint rifles, where the first shot has to hit exactly where you want it to every single time. Now, with your other specialized finishes like DLC or TIN or even Cerakote, you're in more of a hybrid world. These aren't really meant to replace a base finish on the barrel, but they're there to help add extra protection to the barrel itself. And in the case of DLC and TIN, they're there to help reduce friction, just a little bit more and improve the barrel. Still with me, guys? I know Caleb from Brownells got through all of this subject 6 years ago in just 2 minutes, and here I am over-explaining it all. I hear you, I really do. But let me tell you what all of this actually means with a real quick decision guide. If you're building a duty or a defensive rifle, you can really go with either chrome lined or nitride on your barrel. It just depends on how you are as an individual. If you're like everyone's buddy Greg and you hate cleaning your rifle and always run the cheapest possible ammo you can find, I'd suggest snagging up a nitride barrel for that build. If you're more like me and you clean guns for fun while you're watching a podcast and you only run top shelf ammo because you're a snub, chrome lined is probably the way to go. Say you want to do something like build a 1,000-yard AR platform rifle though, like our buddy Charlie is over on the Stinger YouTube channel. 416R stainless steel is going to be the automatic winner. Pair it with a heavy profile barrel like this heavy thing at a 1.7 or a 1.8 twist rate, depending on the size of the round you're sending through it, and you're gonna be knocking down some super tight groups. Now, if you wanna hear more about that build that Charlie's working on, by the way, you can do a quick search for the AT3 Armory channel up in the search bar up here, and you'll find our podcast where Charlie broke down the full 1,000-yard AR-15 that he's working on. Okay, what if you're building a high volume range toy, something that you plan to just dump magazines through just to have fun? You're gonna want a barrel that laughs at sustained fire, right? Now this is where your chrome line barrel is gonna come into play, especially if you're planning to run it super hot and shoot it super fast. They're built to be almost punishment proof, and the chromium layer is extremely smooth, tough, and resists heat and fouling, just like I've said earlier. You get a maximum lifespan when you're shooting high round counts very fast when you're using that chromium on the inside of your barrel. If you can't find a chrome lined barrel in the profile or at the price point you want, nitride is gonna be your next best choice because it also offers low friction and better wear resistance than just bare steel might. Now let's talk about the two most common advanced use cases. We're probably talking about suppressors and super harsh environments. Running a suppressor dumps all that corrosive hot gas back into the barrel in action, so you need the best corrosion resistance that you can possibly get, and that's an easy win for nitride. Since the entire barrel is case hardened, it gives you good corrosion resistance. Now, if you live on the coast or somewhere like Florida or the Eastern Carolinas where the humidity is a constant problem, nitride is also going to be the winner to prevent that exterior surface rust you get with untreated Parkerized barrels. All right, so real fast, rapid fire. Which combinations actually work together in the real world, and what do I recommend? I've seen you guys asking down in the comments for my suggestions, so I'm gonna give them to you right now. Remember, this is just like my opinion, man. For duty and defense use, guys, I want you to go with a 4150 CMB steel with a mid-length gas system, a government or a SOCOM profile, and then a chrome lined bore with a phosphate exterior or just a straight nitride finish if that's what's in your budget. For precision, you need to go with the 416R stainless steel with a rifle length gas system and a heavy or a hybrid profile. And often you don't need an interior finish at all because of that high chromium steel content. Or sometimes you might want to go with a specialty enhancement like a polish bore or a DLC exterior. Just really depends on what your budget is. For general purpose range use or for my budget bubbas, I want you to go with a 4140 or a 4150 steel, skip the vanadium. Go with whatever profile is in your budget while you're on the hunt for your barrel, and honestly go with a nitride finish to save some cash and to keep everything nice and simple. So that decision guide should have given you the quick answer on how finishes impact real world performance, but let's get just a little bit deeper. Hang in with me. Knowing what finish to pick is really only half of the battle, and I want you guys to really truly understand why your barrel might be performing that way that it is based on the finish. So let's talk about corrosion and environmental resistances just for a second. The enemy here is always going to be moisture and salt. The worst performer is your standard manganese phosphate, which needs external oil treatments constantly to prevent rust. The best performers are nitride and then your interior chrome lining. Nitride is arguably better because the treatment chemically changes the entire surface of the steel, giving you better resistance on both the interior and the exterior at the same time. Now, the chrome lining is great, but only for your bore in your chamber. It leaves the exterior dependent on that phosphate coating, and that is going to be an issue for you, especially if you live in a perpetually wet or salty environment. You know, somewhere like Hawaii where you can literally feel the air between your fingers when you rub them together. Nitride's going to be your undisputed champion for this specific one. Now, when it comes to wear or friction and barrel longevity, both the chrome lining and the nitride were designed to extend the barrel's life. The chrome lining adds a thin layer of super hard material to the bore, which is great for resisting throat erosion and wear from repeated heavy use. Nitride, on the other hand, infuses nitrogen into the surfaces of the steel, creating a hardened skin that reduces friction, which leads to less fouling and less abrasive wear as the bullet travels down the bore. Both are absolutely phenomenal, but to maximize resistance against throat erosion from extreme sustained heat, chrome is going to be your benchmark. Now, when it comes to accuracy, harmonics, consistency, my stainless steel guys are fist pumping right now. Raw 416R was literally designed specifically for this. The R stands for rifle barrel quality, guys. It gives you the best raw accuracy potential because it can be machined super consistently, and there's no added material layers at all like chrome that could potentially be non-uniform inside of the barrel. Now, finally, let's talk about the cost versus performance trade-offs. Because barrel manufacturers have streamlined the process, a nitride barrel can often be had for the same price or even slightly cheaper than its mil-spec chrome-lined counterpart made from the exact same steel. Nitride is a single-step process, like I said earlier. That means overall, it's less work to complete the barrel, which means less time to complete the manufacturing process, which generally translates to a lower price on the barrel for the manufacturer, and that gets passed on to you as a consumer. Chrome lining, on the other hand, is a two-step process. Phosphate exterior plus the electroplating interior. So today, nitride often offers the best performance per dollar ratio, but chrome lined is still easily found and a great long-term durability choice, but it really boils down to what kind of metal was used when the barrel was being manufactured. Just like with everything else in this series, guys, there isn't a best barrel finish. Try to think of it like picking tires for your truck. You can probably throw a good set of all-terrain tires on and be fine no matter what you're doing. But if you know all you're doing is ripping up the woods in backcountry, or you live somewhere where it snows 6 months out of the year, you're probably gonna tailor your tires specifically to match what you're doing with your vehicle. Same thing with your barrel finish. Now, if you've been with us since the start of episode 1 of this series, congratulations. You probably know more about barrels than just about 95% of people you're out in the range with. At the very least, you definitely know more than CJ, who hasn't been paying attention the whole time he's been sitting behind the camera.
Hey.
This is your barrel extension. And this is the star chamber. These are the locking lug recesses, the M4 feed ramps, and the index pin. On the inside of the barrel, you've got your chamber, your throat, and then the bore itself. Then down here at the end of the barrel, you've got your gas port, the gas block journal, the muzzle threads, and the crown. I'm gonna teach you about the anatomy of your AR-15 barrel so that the next time something goes wrong with the heart and soul of your rifle, you know the proper nomenclatures to describe the problem with your barrel to whoever you're talking about the problem with. Look, you don't need to be a gunsmith to work on an upper receiver, and you certainly don't need a certification to have an understanding of the basic parts of your barrel. If you've been watching this series since episode 1, then you already know a ton about barrels anyways, but episode 6 here is where we're gonna cover down on just the anatomy of your rifle barrel so that you know what each piece is doing for you when you actually pull the trigger of your rifle. Now, you'll probably notice the white background here behind me today. We haven't had that in the previous episodes of this series, and it's kind of new. But this is a tool for our editor, Ben, from Korean Marksman, to put some diagrams up on the screen behind me while I talk through the parts of the barrel so that you can get a better look at it than just what I'm holding or whatever B-roll CJ hands off. Hopefully, he isn't using this for anything nefarious right now, and I assure you, Ben, your paycheck will reflect. Okay, so let's start at the back of the barrel where the barrel actually meets with the upper receiver, and then we'll work our way forward through the barrel. Now, this big chunk right here at the beginning of the barrel is called the barrel extension. Most people think AR-15s are monolithic or just one piece, and that's not actually the case. The barrel extension is actually threaded onto the barrel blank during the manufacturing process. And usually this barrel extension is going to be made from 8620 steel because it's a low alloy nickel chromium molybdenum case hardened steel. It's possible for these barrel extensions to be made from 17.4 pH stainless steel, S7 tool steel, or even something simple like 4140 chromoly. But for the most part, the standard is that 8620 steel because of that high surface hardness for repeated bolt locking and unlocking and feeding while resisting cracking from the high pressures that are going down on this end of the barrel. Now, if we look at the back of this extension, the first thing you're going to notice is this star pattern chamber, which you might just hear people call the star chamber. That's the name of this whole internal area where your bolt locks up. If you were to look inside of here, you're going to see 7 deep grooves cut into the steel that are called locking lug recesses. And when you chamber around and the bolt rotates as part of the cycle of operation, the bolt slugs slide into these recesses to lock the bolt before you fire. Now, staying right here on the exterior of this barrel extension, what you're probably noticing are these 2 deep notches at the bottom. These are the M4 feed ramps. Most modern AR-15 barrels use this longer M4 style ramp instead of the old short rifle ramps. They're what helps the bullet nose feed smoothly from the magazine into the chamber of your rifle. If you're having feeding problems and you've already ruled out the magazines as the issue, check your feed ramps. You might find out that there's something wrong with them. Last bit on the extension, we've got the index pin up here on the 12 o'clock position. This isn't anything too high tech or fancy, guys. I'm actually fairly certain that they put this on there to stop the Marine Corps' armorers from installing the barrels upside down. It interfaces with the locating notch on your upper receiver to make sure you're getting the barrel timed correctly. And it's another mechanical connection to help keep the barrel from rotating. What you're not seeing here, however, is the barrel tenon, which is what the barrel extension is actually screwed onto. Typically, your barrel extension is going to be screwed onto those threads at around 120 to 150 foot-pounds of torque, and they're also generally going to be set in place using extremely high temperature thread locker. If you have the right tools and knowledge, you can actually take this entire piece of the barrel off and replace it with a brand new one. But that's not something that we can actually get into here on YouTube, so we won't. This is also where the headspace is set. The distance from the bolt face to the chamber is determined right here when they thread the extension on and then ream the chamber. The only way to test this is with a specialized go, no-go gauge, but honestly, guys, that's going to be better left to someone with proper training. If your barrel is manufactured properly, headspace isn't something that you should ever have to worry about unless you have a specialized hand-built barrel that allows for slight adjustments. But if that's you, I'm just going to go out on a limb and assume that you knew what you were getting yourself into. So right after the barrel extension, we move into what's called the chamber. This is the precisely machined cavity at the back of your barrel's bore where your cartridge sits. If you've ever heard the words around in the chamber, this is what that means. This is where the body of the round is hanging out while it's waiting for you to pull the trigger and send the projectile downrange. So the chamber job is pretty straightforward. It holds the cartridge so that the projectile is in alignment with the bore via the throat. And it also contains the pressure of the round when you pull the trigger so that the projectile is directed down the barrel. This is also why it's going to be one of the thicker parts of the barrel, because it needs to contain all of that high pressure gas repeatedly while you're shooting. If you're someone who really loves to shoot cheap ammo, you need to pay attention to this area of your barrel. If you're having trouble closing the bolt or you're getting sticky extraction, the chamber is one of those areas that you should probably troubleshoot first. If you're cleaning your rifle on the regular though, this isn't going to be an issue for you. New shooter, I can already hear you. What's that word throat mean, Josh? Everyone keeps telling me about throat erosion. I don't even know where it is. So the throat is the transition space where the bullet leaves the chamber and starts its hobbit adventure down the barrel. So right at the front of the chamber, you have a short cylindrical section of the barrel that is sometimes called a free bore, where the bullet is sitting with no rifling touching it yet. This tapers slightly into what's called the lead, where the lands gradually start to bite into the projectile and spin it. This is a space where the bullet has just a little bit of room to get moving before the rifling starts to do its job, like we talked about back in episode 2 of this series. This gap affects chamber pressure, muzzle velocity, how the bullet jumps into the rifling, and ultimately your accuracy. A longer throat, like in a 5.56 NATO chamber, for example, is safer with hotter mil-spec ammunition, while a shorter throat, like in a 2.23 chamber, can give you just slightly better accuracy with lighter bullets, but it can also spike the pressures. This is where a 2.23 barrel and a 5.56 barrel are actually different. So a 5.56 chamber has a noticeably longer throat, and that extra room lets the bullet get moving before the rifling bites into it. So it safely handles the hotter, higher pressure mil-spec ammunition without spikes in pressure. Whereas a 2.23 Remington, on the other hand, has a shorter and tighter throat that can give you slightly better accuracy with match grade ammunition, but it also means you get a higher spike in total chamber pressure. The easy way to remember this or to think about it is that you can safely shoot 2.23 out of a 5.56 barrel, but you should never shoot 5.56 out of a 2.23 barrel because you can start to have pressure issues. If you want to get the best of both worlds, then there's something called 2.23 Wild, and that's the way to go because it's a hybrid chamber that's going to accept either round. And I know some guys like to buy 2.23 when it's on sale, and other guys swear by 5.56, but then accidentally run it out of their friend's 2.23 rifle. 2.23 5.56 rant out of the way, the throat is also the area that starts to wear out first on your barrel in most cases. Every time you fire a round, super hot, high pressure gas blasts right past the bullet base and starts eating away at the throat. That's called throat erosion, and it's something you've probably heard. It's one of the #1 reasons why your barrel ends up getting what's known as shot out. The more you shoot, the more your throat opens up, just like your group size downrange. But this can take tens of thousands of rounds, so make sure you're checking your fundamentals before you call facts on talking about throat erosion after like 500 rounds. After the throat, we actually entered the bore of the barrel, which is the part that does most of the work stabilizing the round after it's been fired. Now, this is actually a super in-depth topic that I don't want to get too into here because we already have a whole 23-minute video all about the bore, rifling, twist rate, and how barrels are manufactured right here. It's episode 2 in this series, so go check that out if you want to learn more about the bore. I don't have enough time to cover it in depth today. As we continue down the bore axis towards the end of the barrel, you're going to notice this section right here with a small hole drilled into the barrel. Now, this is not a place for you to insert spaghetti into the barrel for easy access later when you need a snack. It's the gas port. During the cycle of operations, as your projectile travels down the bore of your rifle's barrel, it's being followed by hot gas. This hole acts as a sort of vent for the gas to escape the barrel, which pushes back into the receiver, enabling the direct impingement gas system to cycle your bolt carrier group and keep the rifle running in a semi-automatic fashion. The location of this hole actually determines the gas length of your rifle. If you move the hole forwards or backwards on the barrel, you can increase or decrease the amount of dwell time the bullet has after it passes the port, and it directly impacts the amount of gas that gets sent back and the amount of recoil that you feel too. Right around that gas port is a machines section called the gas block journal. This is a slightly thicker and perfectly round area where your gas block is going to slide on and lock into place. You're going to see different diameters depending on the barrel profile, usually a 0.625 inch for your pencil barrels or 0.750 inch for your standard barrels, or even like a 0.936 on the heavy barrels. But it's just your gas block journal at the end of the day. On the other side of that, you might see a little indexing dimple for the set screws on your gas block. This is going to give your screws a nice positive spot to bite into so that the gas block can't rotate and accidentally cover up the gas port. And it also makes it easier to align your gas block too, unless you're CJ.
Hey!
When you're choosing or installing a barrel, make sure that the gas port location matches the gas system length that you want and that the journal diameter matches with your gas block as well. Mismatching these things means you're going to have to buy whole new things in order to get them to line up on your barrel. When you're choosing or installing a barrel, guys, make sure that the gas port location matches the gas system length that you want, and make sure that the journal diameter matches with the gas block if you've already got the gas block. Now, on to the end of the barrel here where we have this threaded section. Your barrel probably has a muzzle device on the end of it if you're looking at it right now. Underneath of that muzzle device, however, you're gonna have these threads right here, which enable the muzzle device to be attached or detached to the barrel. For pretty much every 5.56 or 223 AR-15 barrel out there, the standard thread pitch is gonna be 1/2 by 28. That's a 1/2 inch diameter with 28 threads per inch. If you ever step up to a bigger caliber, you're usually gonna see something like 5.8 by 24 instead, but your mileage may vary. Most barrels also have this small shoulder right here behind the thread so that the muzzle device can seat square and be properly timed with the barrel. And we all know that the only way to properly time a barrel is to use a special left-handed shim made in the Czech Republic. If you know, you know. Right at the very tip, literally the last thing the bullet touches is the barrel crown. That's the finished face of the bore at the muzzle. It's usually recessed just a little bit to protect the rifling lands from dings and scrapes. And what it does is actually pretty simple. It lets the high pressure gas escape evenly all the way around the base of the bullet as it exits the barrel. If it's dinged or it's uneven or if it has some burrs in it from really stupid cleaning techniques that your drill instructor taught you back in 2006, the gas blows out crooked and your bullet can actually start to tumble or keyhole. Fun fact, back in 2006, Marine recruits on Marine Corps Recruit Depot San Diego were taught to clean the crown of their M16 barrel by removing their firing pin and rubbing the tip of the pin against the crown to create friction and remove carbon buildup from inside of the muzzle device. I'll let you guys stew on that one for a while we finish up. I lived it, it happened to me, I seen it. Guys, just to recap, we've got the barrel extension, the star chamber with locking lug recesses, the M4 feed ramps, we've got the index pin, the chamber and throat, then the bore itself, the gas port, gas block journal, and then the muzzle threads and crown. So that, in a nutshell, is the anatomy of the AR-15 barrel. Now, in a few weeks, TJ and I are gonna go head out to the range and we're gonna test some of the cheapest barrels that we can find against some of the most expensive barrels we can find. Today, we have a $30 barrel and a $327 barrel, and also a few barrels in between. And as you've noticed, we're on the range, and the title of this video is Cheap versus Expensive Barrels. Let's get into it. Now, over the past few months, you might have noticed we've been doing a long series on AR-15 barrels, talking about everything from what they're made of, how they're manufactured, to twist rate and rifling and the parts of the barrel, everything. You can see that whole playlist right up here in a card. What I wanted to do now was get out on the range and put all of that into practice and actually physically show you what all of that means when you're making a barrel selection. So today we've got 4 AR-15 barrels on 4 exactly identical upper receivers. The only thing that's different on any of these upper receivers is the barrel. They've all got the same AT3 slick side. They've got the same Stinger Hawk XL handguard. We're using the same exact brand new AT3 3XP, and they've all got the same muzzle device. Now, each barrel is also 16 inches long. Each barrel, with the exception of one, has a 1 to 7 inch twist rate. And other than that, the only difference is what they're made of, how they're manufactured, and which brands made them. We're also going to be using the same lower receiver, the same bolt carrier group, and the same charging handle on every single complete rifle, so that the only thing, literally the only thing that's going to be different on each of these firearms is the barrel. All right, shooting back at the studio for a second. We had some issues with the speaking parts out at the range. Microphones were being a little weird while we were filming, so we came back here and we're filming this after the fact for you guys, and I got a little bit of a script going. So for the purpose of brevity, here is how we actually conducted the test on the 4 barrels that you're about to see. At the start of each test, we took an initial ambient temperature reading of our barrels using either contact leads or a temperature probe. Now, the outside temperature and the location of where the upper receivers were sitting prior to the start of each string of fire had a direct and mostly uncontrollable impact on the starting temperature of each barrel during the cold bore session. So we wanted to make sure that the baseline was established for our data collection by taking that initial temperature reading. So after that initial temperature reading, we fired 10 rounds from a cold bore into the head of our targets, which you can see back here on the wall behind me. And then we took the temperature again to get a second reading. Following this, we walked downrange to review the shot groups on the head, which created a small gap in the recording prior to starting up the heat up phase of the test. So if you're looking at graphs after the fact, you'll notice on each test there's a small dip in the temperature before the heat up phase started. At the start of the heat up phase, we took a second measurement, and that's why that dip exists. And that second measurement was just to establish a baseline, and then we fired our 4-magazine string of 120 rounds total center mass into our downrange target. In between each magazine, we took another temperature reading and logged it, and then fired off a new session on our chrono to make sure that we were collecting data as accurately as possible throughout all of the testing. Speaking now from the studio after having already done the tests, I can tell you that there's at least 3 instances reflected in the data where we accidentally fired 31 rounds instead of 30 during this phase. And that was caused by CJ or myself being human while we were loading the magazines, and we just miscounted them. There's also 3 instances of us firing 11 or 8 rounds from the 10-round shot groups, and that was caused by the minor lack of attention to detail in our testing while we were loading the magazines. That's on us, definitely not the barrels. You'll be able to see it raw in the data. At the conclusion of the 120-round string of fire, we took the temperature one last time and then fired a final 10-round shot group into the head of the target to compare it to the initial string of fire that we did at the very beginning. All of the shots were recorded on our 2 GoPros, one of which was downrange at the target, and the other which was right next to me on the firing line, aimed at the chrono and the barrel of the rifle, as well as the temperature reading device, but that screen didn't get picked up. Our first barrel on the chopping block was actually the last barrel that we shot for the day. This was our super budget barrel, and I'm gonna be straight up with you. I don't know what this barrel actually costs. In order for you to get the barrel, it's gonna cost you right around $350, and you're also gonna get an entire AR-15 from Radical Firearms with the barrel. We've actually used the rifle that this barrel came on in a host of other videos, which you can find by checking on this card right here in the top upper right-hand corner. Now, if you direct your attention over here, our editor Ben from Korean Marksman is actually throwing the specifications for this barrel on the screen for you so that you can see it all right here. So this was our 4140 barrel out on the range, and it's similar what you're gonna see to most of the Poverty Pony AR-15s that you can find out there at your local gun store. While the barrel has a Radical Firearms roll mark on it, I don't think it's actually made by Radical themselves. All of my research on this subject points to Radical using a 3-letter third-party OEM to manufacture these barrels, which is honestly fairly common in the budget AR-15 space, but I don't know for sure who that manufacturer is, so I'm not gonna be able to tell you. Just real fast, what's the difference between a 4140 and a 4150 barrel? The Society of Automotive Engineers actually gives us the definition of these metals, so let's get into that real quick and do a recap. The first digit indicates the primary alloying metals, which in the case of most of our barrels today is a chromium molybdenum alloy steel. The second digit specifies the series within that group, which is also always going to be, in the case of these rifles, the standard chromoly series. When you see a 1 after the 4, so 41 means that. Now the last 2 digits represent the carbon content in hundredths of a percent, which determines how hard the metal actually is. So the 4140 is gonna be 1/100th of a percent less carbon content than a 4150 barrel. If you want to learn more about this subject, I highly recommend heading back to episode 1 of this series, where we break down the material science of AR-15 barrels. Let's cut back to the range footage for some backyard science real quick. We'll see you out there. All right, first up, we've got our 4140 CMV barrel. This is our budget barrel. It came off of the RF-15 or the Radical Firearms. I think it's RF-15 SOCOM. So we're gonna go ahead and start off by taking our internal temperature. And then after that, we'll give it our first 10-round shot group. Been a little warm out today, so the internal of the barrel, 85.8. You ready, CJ? Ready. $29.65. And shot number 10 is 3007 internal temperature. So 123.4 after the first 10 rounds. Let's go down range and check that group. So our 0 looks like it's off quite a bit to the left, but we can see our group hitting right here. Right back here, CJ, you can actually see where our other shots hit as well. with the 5.56. So we're gonna take this group and we're gonna run with it, and then we're gonna come down and we're gonna shoot our 120 round group here. Now you might notice that there's some battery differences. We first shot this string of tests with this rifle first thing in the morning. And after we heated the barrel up, we decided that the way that we were testing it didn't quite make sense. So what we did was we actually set that rifle off to the side and we let it cool back down to the ambient temperature. It's been sitting for about 7-8 hours right now. So now we're just starting this. Let's go back and get down to the next 120. All right, we'll be starting at 98.2 to 98.4 is where we're getting this. We're gonna go for our 120 body shot. CJ, are you ready? I'm ready. 3,045, 2964, 2957, and that is empty. All right, after the first 30 round magazine, we're still going up. We're at 139, 141.
Wow, that's like impossible. I can't see what it
198.6 is where we leveled off. 3,000. 3,000, 2969, 3010, that's magazine number 2. 260.9, 260.7 is where we're at on this one. 2971, 2956, 2954 on the third magazine. Let's get the temperature real quick. That's getting real hot. All right, so we're at 312 after the third magazine. Remember, kids, when you're shooting, your weapon goes on safe and your ejection port cover is closed. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. Close the ejection port cover early. Don't put that in the video.
Ben, keep that in the video.
Don't keep that in the fucking video, Ben. You're fired. 3036, 2995, 2985, 2974. All right, get this last temperature before we do our 10 round group. 341.4 is our final temperature. Last 10 round group on the head. $29.77, and that is us rounds complete with the first rifle. On the exterior, we're reading 185. Back by the chamber, reading 140. On the handguard by the gas block, we're at 231. You're seeing this at the beginning of the video, but we ended up doing it last. This is the hottest thing we've shot so far. All right, so here's our 120 round shot group. It's pretty large. Now, when it comes to our last 10 rounds on the head, I'm actually not sure 100%, but it looks like some of them ended up over here. It looks like they might have entirely shifted to the left. And maybe even down a little bit. If we look right here, down here, we can kind of see as the barrel heated up, it kind of started drooping the shots down to the left a little bit. Before we get too deep into the weeds on talking about the test results, I need to explain a few things so that we're all looking at the exact same sheet of music. These are just surface level definitions that I'm going to be giving you on the subjects of what we recorded, but it's good for you guys to know why this stuff matters so that when we're relaying this information to you, it makes sense. I know for some of you guys, this is old hat, but for some people, this might be new stuff, so I want to talk about it real quick. Extreme spread and standard deviation are two key statistics that chronographs automatically calculate and display after you shoot a string or a series of shots. We're going to call these ES and SD for short, and they measure shot-to-shot velocity consistency. Lower numbers indicate that the barrel is producing more uniform muzzle velocities with this specific type of ammunition. Extreme spread is your lowest velocity compared to your highest velocity, and standard deviation is the FPS deviation from the median average speed across an entire series of shots. So that surface level crash course out of the way, let's look at the raw data from our chronograph first. Our average FPS with this barrel was 2,989.3 feet per second. We saw an average temperature rise of roughly 2.063 degrees Fahrenheit per shot across the entire string. Now, our highest track shot was 3,107 feet per second, and our lowest recorded velocity was 2,887.5, leaving us with an extreme spread of 219.5 FPS and a standard standard deviation of 31.3 FPS. Now you'll probably notice that as I've been talking, there's been a few line graphs off to my side that Ben has thrown up on the screen for our more visual learners. If you guys want access to the interactive versions of these graphs that we built from our data, stick around to the end and I'll tell you where you can find them in just a bit. Before we move on to looking at the target, I purposely did not zero the optics that we put on these rifles, and the same exact optic model was used on every single upper receiver, with the optic being mounted in the same spot for each. We are looking at the group size alone, and we're not focused on the performance of the 3x prism optics that we used throughout the testing. So each optic was brand new and fresh out of the box the day before we started testing. Now, if we look at my 3rd grade drawing here, I've drawn a box around our 120 round shot group, and that box is based on the highest, the lowest, the furthest left, and the furthest right shots in the group. Like all of our targets, there's gonna be a clear center of the group, but overall we end up with a 4¼ by 5½ inch shot group inside of our box, with roughly 14 of our total shots that could possibly be outside of the shot group because of my own inadequacies as a shooter, or because of other environmental factors that I can't control. What's interesting to note here is the shot group's tendency to droop low and to the left like I'm some kind of bad pistol marksman. We also saw this drooping off of the target's head during our final 10-shot string, where the rounds impacted low into the left of the original 10-round shot group that we took to the head. Moving on from that though, second on the chopping block, we've got the barrel that we might honestly be the most biased towards in all of this testing, and that's the 4150 CMB barrel from our team here at AT3 Tactical, and it falls firmly in line with the mid-tier of barrels that are on the market today, and it comes at a price tag of around $125. All right, once again, if you're looking over here, you're gonna see the specifications of this specific barrel, and I'm doing my best impression of Vanna White for wherever Ben put it. The primary difference between this $125 barrel and the previous like $30 to $50 barrel is that the material makeup of the barrel itself is completely different. Since it's a 4150 CMV, we're looking at a 0.10% higher carbon content in the barrel, which gives us a harder barrel in comparison to the last one, which is more in line with the industry standards of AR-15 barrels that are on the market today. Like our last barrel, we've got a nitride finish on this one, which is a full barrel case hardening treatment that the manufacturer does to increase the overall hardness of the barrel, which increases both the longevity and the life of the barrel by putting it into a high temperature salt bath that infuses nitrogen right into the surface of the steel. But if you want to learn more about barrel finishes, I suggest checking out episode 5 of this series, where we got a lot more in depth on that topic. Let's get out to the range and put this thing through its paces. Starting temperature is 73.7 on lead 1, 73.9 on lead 2. All right, 10-round shot group to the head, firing now. $29.54. Current temperature 115.7. Average was 29.89 for velocity. This is clear. Let's go check that shot group. All right, so that's our cold bore group. You can see we got one flyer here, to be expected. I'm only human, so we could probably call this a 2-inch shot group. You know, the zero's off just a little bit again. All right, starting our 120 round shot group. Our starting temperature is 99.6 degrees. We just set a new group. 30.47. 29.74. That's a mag change, so our temperature after the first 30, we got 211. 31.57, that's the hottest one yet. 3001, that is empty. Current temperature is 258. 3035. Current temperature is 301. 29.93. That's it. Our temperature right now is 356. All right, we're gonna do our last 10-round shot group on the head. Starting to get morale. All right, our final temperature on the barrel is 342. Our average was 3,029 feet per second on the last string. So we can see our 100 round shot group here in a nice tight little square. You can see that's probably about a 4-inch group with my shooting overall. A majority of the shots, you can see kind of burned a hole right through here. Then we've got our second 10 shot group. We're down to about 106. We're still warm to the touch. You can tell it was shot, but it's not super hot. These are also in direct sunlight. So I'd say after about 20 minutes, our handguard is down to a good safe temperature. Barrel is reading 97. We're sitting in the high 90s right now, about 20 minutes after we've taken it out the line. Popping off with the chronograph data here first, our average FPS with the AT3 barrel was 3,001 feet per second, which is the highest out of all 4 of the barrels that we saw. And the average temperature rise was roughly 2.067 degrees per shot. Our highest track shot was 3,168 feet per second, and our lowest recorded velocity was 2,933.4, leaving us with an extreme spread of 234.6 FPS and a standard deviation of 34.2 feet per second. Now, moving to our target and using our super scientific group box method, we've got a box that is 4 1/4 by 4.5 inches in size. And if we were to kill any of the outliers, we'd be removing about 7-ish shots. But that's probably arguable. Third up to bat here, and we're looking at one of the cream of the crop barrels in the duty rifle space. This is a cold hammer forged Geissele that commands a price tag of $365, which is $15 more than the entire rifle that our first barrel came with. With a barrel like this, we don't need to do too much of an introduction because a lot of you are already going to be super familiar with it and barrels like it. But I do want to roll the stats right here real quick so you guys can check them out, and then we'll talk just a little bit about why this barrel cost so much more than some of the entire budget rifles that you can get at your local gun store. Real quick, I know we've covered this in episode 2 of the series, but for just a real fast recap, I need to explain what cold hammer forged actually means. This is something of a marketing buzzword that guys get sucked into, and it usually doesn't get explained really well, and people don't have a great understanding of what it means. So let me talk about it real fast before we go back to the range and roll our test footage on this outstanding barrel. To start the process of cold hammer forging a barrel, you take a barrel blank and then you insert a hardened steel mandrel rod with the reverse or inverse rifling pattern engraved on its surface into the bore of the blank. Once you have the blank and the mandrel assembly together, it goes into this like massive forging machine where huge carbide or hardened steel hammers strike the exterior of that barrel at an extremely high speed, reaching hundreds of strikes per second while the barrel blank rotates inside of the machine. This pounds the steel inwards onto the mandrel, compressing and flowing the metal to form the rifling inside and also the chamber of the barrel. It also does all of the external contouring of the barrel profile as well, all in one really fast process. Now, the benefits of this is that since it's a cold forming process, it hardens the steel and then strengthens the steel grain structure, providing additional resistance to heat and throat erosion. Now, on top of that, you add in a chrome line chamber and the phosphate finish, and well, I mean, you're gonna see what that means for you as the shooter here in a second. Ben, go ahead and roll that test footage.
Yes, master.
Starting temperature is 82 on our top lead. The ambient temperature outside is currently 70 degrees. 10 round group on the head. Our temperature is 134 on the top lead, 107 on the bottom. Bottom's reading a little cooler today. Our average is 2946. I think we had one that was real high, giving us some kind of weird extreme spread, but that could be the ammo. Let's go check the group downrange. All right, so our group is not on the head. It's kind of down. Real tight group here. We're gonna go ahead and move out and we're gonna shoot our 120 round group. My point of aim is gonna be right here. I'm expecting we're gonna see our group somewhere down here. Starting temp is 107.9. 120 round shot group, aiming for the body. 2984. 2962, that's empty. Temperature at the end of the first 30 is 231 on the high, 205 on the low. The average velocity there is 2949.5. $29.58. Temperature real quick, high is 288, low is 251. Not sure why there's so much variance, but it could be because one of the leads is not touching quite as well as the other one. A lot of this smoke that you're seeing come off the barrel is actually because this is a Parkerized barrel. So there's a lot of oil and excess stuff on the outside of the barrel. Now that the barrel's heating up, some of that's cooking off. So it's worth remembering that the first two barrels that we shot were nitride finish. This is actually a phosphate with a chrome line. Magazine number 3. All right, we lost the lead. Last shot was 2961. We still have one temperature lead on there, and that is reading 240 degrees. We're gonna go ahead and move on to the last magazine here, and then we'll move into the final 10 round shot groups. All right, here we go. 2970.1, that's an empty chamber. Top temperature there is 320. We're gonna go ahead and move straight into shooting the last 10 round group into the head. And then we'll go downrange and check our results after we take the upper off and get an initial temperature reading and set it off to see how long it cools. Tell you what, the hand guard is significantly hotter on this one, just having your hand up by it, but not too bad. 2994. We get an 8 round shot group because we shot too many on the first one. Time is 2:57. On the handguard, we're getting 172, 219. Handguard's about 215, 240 is what I've seen at the top. This isn't exactly an exact science with this laser. To the touch, this is still really hot. I wouldn't want to handle this without gloves. With gloves, it would be perfectly safe to handle this still. We're not up in that like 400 or 500 range where it really starts to become a threat. Let's go check the group. So I think this is where we're really gonna start to see the $300 difference in the cold hammer forged. We've really drilled a hole through the wood with our 120 rounds. And then you come up here, we can see the second 10 round shot group shifted to the right a little bit. That could have been my point of aim. I don't think so. We made these dots pretty small, but we can see there wasn't too much of a deviation overall. All right, time is 3:17. It's been about 20 minutes. Our first barrel's down to the ambient temperature. Second barrel's down to the ambient temperature. Now for the Geisley, it's been 20 minutes since we took it off the line. It's at 82 degrees. Ambience here, it's been about 40 minutes since this is, well, more like 50 minutes since this one was pulled off the line. It's at 77. So we're safe to touch here after 20 minutes, but it's still a little bit hotter at about 88. Let's roll on to our chrono data real quick. Our average FPS with the G Money barrel here was 2,967.7 feet per second. And we saw an impressive average temperature rise of only 1.684 degrees Fahrenheit per shot, meaning this barrel handled the heat better than all of the barrels we tested. Our highest tracked shot was 3,059.7 FPS, and our lowest recorded velocity was 2,908.8, leaving us with an extreme spread of 150.9 FPS and a standard deviation of 27.5 FPS. These stats alone put the Geisley barrel at the absolute top as our most consistent barrel of the day for this series of tests. Spoiler on the next barrel. Our shot group here speaks for itself. This is a perfectly square 3 7/8 inch by 3 7/8 inch square with 3 shots that we can see as potential flyers away from the average. And the center of our shot group is almost perfectly shot out like someone hit it with a hole punch. When we get more towards the end of this, Ben is gonna do some movie magic to show what all of these shot groups look like next to each other, and it should become abundantly clear what the difference between the cheap and the expensive barrels are, but I have just one more barrel to test, so hang in there with me. Standard barrels out of the way, let's take a look at one of the specialty AR-15 barrels that's out on the market today that you can find. The last series of tests that we conducted was on a $238 Ballistic Advantage Premium Series fluted barrel in 223 Wild. For all intents and purposes, this was the outlier in all of our testing for the day, and the fact that it was made from 416R stainless steel and it had a 1 1/8" twist rate with a very unique barrel profile that you're not gonna really find on any of the other 3 that we've tested so far. Maybe if you went into the exotic range, you'd find more of these, but this was the outlier for the day. Now, we'd expect to see very different test results here, but let's talk about it real fast. So first and foremost, this barrel from Ballistic Advantage states that it has a sub MOA guarantee if you're shooting match grade ammunition. We were not shooting match grade ammunition for these tests, and it's super important that I state that before I show you any of that footage. We were shooting bone stock 55 grain X-Tech 5.56 from Korea, straight out of the little black and yellow box that you're probably all familiar with, which isn't exactly the most high quality ammunition out there, but it was provided to us by our friends at Bulk Munitions, so that's what we used. It gets the job done, and honestly, it's one of the most popular consumer ammunition types available, which is why we wanted to use it for all of these tests, because most of you are probably gonna be shooting something exactly like this while you're out in the range. That said, our 416R barrel has a few huge differences. First off, it's made from 416R stainless steel, which is a barrel material designed for precision rifle barrels. We talked about this at length in episode 1 of the series, so make sure you do go back and check that out if you don't know what it means. Second, you're gonna notice the fluted profile here designed to reduce the overall weight of the barrel while keeping the accuracy benefits from using a thicker profile barrel. It also works to reduce the mass and cool down the barrel faster. Last, you're gonna notice that this barrel has a 1 1/8" twist rate as opposed to the 1 7" twist rate that all of our other barrels in this test has. Pop quiz, for those of you who utilize the comment section, what's the difference between a 1 7" twist rate and a 1 1/8" twist rate? If you don't know, your homework is to go back to episode 2 and check it out. Let's roll the test. So our ambient temperature is 81.8. It's a little bit later in the afternoon, so our temperature outside is 72 degrees, but what you'll notice on the table is that the sun is now coming in from the other side, so the barrel has been sitting in the sun while it's on the bag. A little bit higher of an ambient temperature. Gonna go ahead and take our first 10 round shots down on the head and check that group. $29.78. All right, heat on the barrel is 116 on the top, 126 on the bottom. Our average velocity is 2948.7. All right, so there's 3 extra shots on this. We had a issue with the gas block. It had to get realigned before we could get back on target. So you're gonna see 13 impacts here, but you can see our groups right about here in the neck. Our point of aim, obviously, right here in the head box. We're gonna go back and we're gonna go ahead and shoot our 120 round shot group. We'll be aiming here. I expect to be down somewhere in the C. Looks like our main group is right here. Looks like these might be flyers because it's getting a little bit later in the day and I'm starting to get a little bit fatigued. We're gonna go back and get this next string of 120. Let's hit it. Our starting temperature is 102.2 on the top lead, 105.9 on the bottom lead. Unfortunately, our little heat gauge broke. So we're gonna have to use a contact lead for the rest of it here, just like we did on the first gun that we shot. We used the contact lead. We thought we might get better results out of these leads, but unfortunately they're kind of flimsy and they broke, which is what you get out of a $30 Amazon special. So we're gonna go back to the contact lead for the 416R for the rest of it. After the 10 round shot group, this kind of broke on us. So we'll get our initial temperature off of this by feeding it down the barrel before we load. 82.9, 82.7 is where we're hovering at. It's at about 132 right now. Whoa, 3024. We're at 180 right now. Magazine number 3. 3052 on the last shot there, 289. Of course, this is measuring interior of the barrel, not the exterior, so it's gonna measure hotter. And that's what we saw on the first one too. The one thing that has been happening with this that did not happen with the last barrels is I've been having trouble tracking the dot. I think that might just be because my eyes are getting tired. 2981. Grab this last temp and then we'll shoot that 10 round group at the top. At 325 interior. I'm gonna take an exterior temperature. I don't know if this is gonna give us as good of an exterior temperature, about 263 on the exterior with this. Whew. All right, 10 round group. And 2945 on the last shot. I would like to reiterate that I am starting to get a little bit fatigued, so that may have impacted our group size. Just want to have that out there. In full disclosure, what it won't, however, have affected is our temperature data or our velocity data. But let's go check out the group and see if it is making a difference. Bit of a wider spread on this than we did on the Cold Hammer Forge barrel. I think that might be more me than actually the barrel itself. You can still see some really tight grouping here. These were the first 3 rounds that we took, but you see a pretty tight group here. We're gonna go get that upper receiver off, take that temperature, and then we'll be able to start wrapping this up. So we're getting on barrel temp of 105, on barrel temp of 113, but we're looking at about 202. Time on deck is 444. Our current time is 504. And this is cool to the touch already. Like, I doubt we're gonna get that much heat off of it, if any. Just about 83.5, 91.2. That's pretty much the only place you can feel any heat whatsoever. All right, chrono data real quick. Our average FPS here was 2,975.1 FPS, and our average temperature rise was 1.907 degrees. Our highest tracked shot was 3,057.1 FPS, and our lowest recorded velocity was 2,897.0, leaving us with an extreme spread of 160.1 FPS and a standard deviation of 32.4 FPS. This puts us above the mid-range AT3 tactical barrel, but below the ultra high-end Geissele barrel in consistency. Moving on to the target, and we're looking at a respectable 4x5 and 1/16" shot group with 8 clear flyers. What's worth talking about on this barrel is the time of day, combined with the position of the barrel in testing, likely caused some minor inconsistencies with my point of aim. And I think that might actually account for like all 8 of those shots. If any of you get into the data spreadsheet and you start looking at it real close, you're gonna actually see on the far right where I put some notes about my complaints while we were shooting. It wasn't just me being whiny. We had been out at the range for 7 hours and my eyes were starting to get fatigued from all the shooting we had done that day. Overall, this was a pretty respectable performance out of the Ballistic Advantage barrel, and I think it did okay. Okay, test results complete. I'm gonna have Ben throw some graphs and targetry images on screen for you guys right now that you can check out. Now, remember, our 4140 barrel was purchased for $350, and it came with literally an entire AR-15. Our 4150 barrel runs $125-ish, and our step up from that is the specialty barrel from Ballistic Advantage that comes in at right around $235. Our most high-end barrel for this test is a $365 chrome line Cold Hammer Forge barrel from Geissele, who I like to call G-Money because everything they make is super expensive and nice, but I'm also not gonna tell you exactly which one of these barrels is gonna get the job done for you. Instead, I want to show you the results that we came back with and let you really see what the difference is between a cheap and an expensive barrel based on the data that we collected. Maybe the best value for you is the entire $350 rifle that comes with just a plain good enough barrel. Maybe you need the $375 barrel to complete your duty build. That's up to you. Here's the test results. Go ahead, check them out. Head down into the description if you really want to get into them. But what we are going to do is commit to keeping these same 4 barrels around for the next few years. And as CJ, Charlie, and myself continue to build 16-inch rifles for the channel, we're gonna keep using these same 4 barrels, and we're gonna track every single round that goes through them. As we go, eventually, we're gonna shoot these barrels out. And when that happens, we're gonna report back to you guys with the total number of rounds it took for the barrel to get shot out. Now, throughout these tests, I've mentioned the manufacturer name a number of times for each barrel. I don't want you guys to put a bunch of weight on that because I didn't when I was selecting the barrels for the actual testing. What I cared about and what I really wanted to show is how the barrel materials, manufacturing processes, and the finish of the barrels actually impacted the overall quality of the shooting experience and the accuracy of the rifle as it was built. And I wanted to see how that measured up against the dollar cost of the barrel too, to see where the value truly lied in this. Also, I have to say this, CJ and I are just two human beings who happen to have access to literally an entire warehouse full of infinity gun parts that we can do this stuff with. We're not an accredited laboratory and we're making up our own test parameters as we go along. Also, we're often using our own average to slightly above average shooting skills to obtain these test results. So don't take this as law. Don't head to the AR-15 forums and yell at each other about it for the next 6 weeks. It's not that deep, guys. In short, here's what I'm trying to say. We might have made some mistakes along the way with this testing. In fact, I know that we made a mistake at least once because our temperature leads broke on our first thermometer and we didn't have a backup in the same style. So we ended up having to change the way that we measured temperatures about halfway through the day. That's why we're giving you guys access to all of the chrono data from our test results down in the description of this video. Hit the link down there, sign up for our email list, and we're gonna send you access to the spreadsheet and a write-up that I put together about our findings as soon as it's ready to go. You're also gonna get access to the raw GoPro footage and all of the graphs that we built for this video so that you can draw your own conclusions without me yapping at you for however long this video is.
What happens inside your AR-15 barrel when you pull the trigger? In just under 1 second, 62,000 PSI turns a static cartridge into a precisely machined projectile that flies down the barrel, hitting the target shot after shot. I've helped my buddy Josh produce like a 6-hour-long barrel series. We've gone out to the range to test out the different types of barrels, and now, guys, I know all there is to know about barrels. But one thing that Josh forgot about was, how does this thing, a barrel, get this thing, a bullet, to hit one of these, a target? Well, in this super quick video, I'm gonna show you exactly how the AR barrel gets your bullet to your target every single time. Assuming you know how to aim the thing correctly, that is. To help this explanation be as organized as possible, we're going to follow the bullet during its path through the barrel. Let's get started. Let's start with the bullet sitting inside the magazine. When we hit the bolt release, the BCG slides down the receiver. The bullet is stripped from the magazine and guided smoothly up to the M4 feed ramps, which you can see right here, into the barrel extension. One thing I was surprised to learn about when producing the barrel series with Josh was that the barrel extension is a separate component from the barrel itself. It's a separate high-strength steel component, which is commonly made out of 8620 steel. That is threaded and permanently attached to the rear of the barrel blank during the manufacturing process. The SparkNotes version of this little receiver is that it acts like a mechanical bridge, linking the barrel to the upper receiver. Again, it's usually made from 8620 alloy and it's case-hardened steel, which contains nickel, chromium, and molybdenum. Got it on my first try. It's the standard choice for the barrel extensions due to two vital properties. Number one is its high surface hardness, which withstands bolt friction and protects feed ramps from the wear and tear. And number two is crack resistance, which allows the core to endure extreme firing pressures over and over again. All right, enough about the barrel extension. Let's get back to the bullet. It's now come to rest inside the barrel's chamber, a precisely machined cavity at the back of the barrel's bore, which we'll talk more about later. How the bullet sits inside of this chamber depends heavily on the surrounding steel. If the barrel is crafted from 416 stainless steel, the chamber is cut to exact mirror smooth tolerances designed for peak precision and match grade accuracy. If the chamber is made from 4150 CMV steel or features chrome lining, the bullet rests inside an ultra-hard, heat-resistant vault, built to withstand extreme durability and rapid fire. though the added chrome layer may slightly reduce the maximum accuracy potential. We're ready to pull the trigger, but first let me show you. This is our dummy gun for demonstration purposes, guys, so there is no way this thing can function, and we are using snap caps just to show you guys how everything works together. Now we're ready to pull the trigger. The firing pin strikes the primer, igniting the gunpowder and generating an expanding cloud of gas that rapidly spikes to pressure as high as 62,000 psi, depending on the load that we're using. The brass casing then swells outward to seal the chamber so no gas can escape backward into the upper receiver. With the bolt mechanically locked behind it, the pressure has only one path of least resistance, violently thrusting the bullet forward out of the case neck and into the rest of the bore. As the bullet is forced forward, it slams into the lead. This is where the barrel's rifling begins. How the rifling was manufactured fundamentally alters the bullet's journey and accuracy downrange. Now, as I said before, Josh and I did an entire episode devoted to just rifling of a barrel, so if you want to get more nerded out on barrels, then go ahead and check out that video right over here. What I will say here, though, is that if the barrel uses cut rifling, the bullet engages grooves that were meticulously shaved away one by one, introducing minimal stress to the metal and providing the absolute highest potential for competition-level precision. But if it is a button-rifled barrel, on the other hand, the bullet glides over grooves that were pressed and ironed into the steel, offering great accuracy and smooth finish, if you can even really feel it. If passing through the ultimate, the best, the only barrel the gun tubers use, I'm talking cold hammer-forged barrels, then the bullet travels down a dense, work-hardened bore. CHF barrels are designed for more extreme lifespan and durability than absolute surgical accuracy, though. But when Josh and I did our barrel testing out in the field, that one gave us the best overall group. And it was the only barrel that got basically more consistent as Josh ran more and more ammo through it. You can see it right here. If you want to find out why Josh and I got this result at 50 yards, then you can check out the video that just came out last week right over here. But it really depends on what your goal is for your build when it comes to barrel selection. We're not quite done with rifling yet because the pitch of the grooves is called the twist rate, which dictates how aggressively the bullet is forced to spin. If the bullet is a heavier projectile, like a 77 grain round, a fast 1 in 7 twist rate violently spins it to ensure gyroscopic stability over long distances. If it is a shorter, lighter bullet, a slower 1 in 9 twist rate applies a gentler spin so the bullet doesn't overstabilize or even disintegrate in midair. Matched correctly, this spin ensures the bullet will slice through the air straight and true rather than tumbling end over end. Just like if you throw a football with a super tight spiral like Caleb Williams or a gentle lob like, I don't know, Jordan Love. There's a lot more to rifling and twist rate that I'm just not going to get into here, guys. So, like I said before, go ahead and check out Josh's video all about this topic. I'm sure you'll love it. Okay, our bullet is now screaming down the bore. Then it flies past a small hole drilled into the top of the barrel known as the gas port. Because the bullet's body is effectively plugging the barrel ahead of the port, a portion of the high-pressure gas is chasing it and is vented up into this hole to cycle the rifle's action. The gas then travels back through the gas tube until it enters the BCG. That's where things get a little more complicated, but let's just stick with the barrel this time, guys. If you want to learn more about how the BCG works, then you can go ahead and check out this video I did right over here in the card. The distance from the gas port to the muzzle device determines the bullet's dwell time, which is a term you might hear thrown around here and there, so let me explain it. It means how long the bullet stays in the barrel after the gas has been siphoned. The specific length of the gas system directly impacts the rifle's recoil impulse and practical accuracy. But why is that? Well, let me explain. If the port is drilled for a short carbine length gas system on a 16-inch barrel, the dwell time is overly long, creating excessive gas pressure that violently slams the action open and causes sharp recoil, potentially throwing off accuracy for fast follow-up shots, which is like the whole point of the AR platform in the first place. However, if the bullet passes through a rifle-length gas system, the dwell time is more optimized, resulting in a much smoother cycle, noticeably less recoil, and allowing us to maintain better accuracy unless you just suck at shooting. But the length of the gas system, as well as the dwell time, is going to depend on the specific barrel you are shopping for. So when you're looking at barrels and you care about the recoil impulse, make sure you look at the spec sheet for what kind of gas system it uses and match your gas tube and your gas block to all of that. Let's get back to the bullet's journey before we wrap it up. The bullet reaches the end of the barrel. This is what we call the muzzle crown. This precisely machined edge is its last point of contact. As the bullet's base clears the crown, the massive wave of high-pressure gas behind it is released all the way around it, evenly, I hope. Because the crown is pristine, the gas dissipates symmetrically, preventing any lopsided bursts of gas from knocking the bullet off its path or creating strange recoil impulses. Thanks to the precise chamber holding the pressure, the carefully machined rifling giving it its spin, the optimized gas system providing smooth and stable cycling, and the crown releasing it carefully, the bullet blasts out into the atmosphere, spinning perfectly, flying straight forward on target, exactly where you were aiming it.
If you found value in this video, consider hitting the subscribe button and leaving a comment down below if you want to see more stuff like this in the future. Guys, it really helps CJ and I a ton with driving our content forward, and it also lets us know what you guys want to see. Also, if you want to see the series of videos that led up to us conducting this cheap versus expensive experiment, go ahead and check out this video playlist right here, and it'll start you all the way back on episode 1 of the AT3 Tactical Barrel series. We'll see you over there. I wasn't ready. Muzzle velocities with this specific type of ammunition. Ammunition? Grand Theft Auto over here. We got this barrel test video before GTA 6, and that's the end of that.